and then I'll just leave us unmuted and we can just get rolling. We don't have a whole lot in the chat. Forgot to do any social media posts about recording, I guess.
Yeah, it's normal time this week. So
yeah, normal. Yeah.
we're back on schedule.
Yeah, indeed. Which is like, yeah. It's like trying to get it in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, we are like, okay, now we're back on schedule. So then this episode, and then we'll have a week off and then back for a roundtable.
Roundtable. Whoops, sorry.
Yeah, so that's back on track. Summer is upon us. Did you hear about that? Did you see that Pikachu thing I posted? A theater in Montreal. I think?
Yeah. The La Llorona, the Mexican horror film or whatever it is. How do you say that?
La Llorona.
La Llorona.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that.
Oh man, I never saw that. It made me laugh, and I was like reading through like some people that were tweeting, and they were in the theater. Apparently, even the trailers had the kids crying because it was like Child's Play and like the new Annabelle and like. I can't remember what else. And then the very first scene is a mom drowning her kid. And it's the first scene of the movie.
Good Lord.
I'm like, dude, that's amazing.
Those kids are going to be traumatized for life.
I remember being a young kid going to see a horror movie and they put like Flipper on by mistake. And I'm like, come on. I'm here for a horror movie. I'm only 8. I want a horror movie.
That is the
Flipper.
That is the horror movie for you.
No kidding. Exactly. Well, we'll get started. It looks like we may have somebody else in the chat, but not speaking up yet, but we'll go ahead and hit the intro and get started on book club number 14. Almost at 13, but that is last time. All right, so let's go ahead and hit the intro.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the dark tower came.
We are quartet, one from many. The palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's Magnum Opus, the Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And I didn't mess up the intro.
Hey, first time in a few shows.
Almost did there. Almost did.
I saw the look. You always look at me like it's my fault. You like glare at me. Like,
oh yeah, because you enjoy it.
I do. I won't lie.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, we're here for, as the screen is showing on, if you're watching on the YouTube. If not, you're watching on the podcast or listening to the podcast. And in that case, you obviously see like, oh, it says book club.
You delayed the mess up, but it was just a little bit.
Yeah, not in the intro though. The intro is the thing you can't screw up because you're pretty much saying the same thing all the time. So messing that up, that's no bueno. So so we're here for book club number 14 on Drawing of the Three. We are actually, I haven't looked. We are just starting with Dead on the Other Side, which is 61% through, according to the Kindle.
Yeah, last book club when we started, we were at like, what was it, like 49 or 51, somewhere right around
somewhere
middle.
In the 50s.
So we're on the backside. We're coming down.
Yeah, indeed. So we'll go ahead and hit the intro stuff real quick, and then dive right into what we got going on. So first of all, if we want to, we're not going to warn you about spoilers, because if you're listening to these, and maybe if you're listening to only these, you might be doing that because you are avoiding spoilers. In these, we don't go any further than we're going to cover in the episode. We could talk about things from book 1 and the first half of book 2, but nothing beyond that. So unless you're further behind than that, you're safe here when it comes to spoilers. So that's the whole point of these shows, I think. And also just to kind of go through and hit everything. If you're new, the reason with the book clubs is because there's big items that we tend to talk about in the round tables, but there's like small, cool, fun conversations that could be had, in the nitty gritty of it. And that's kind of the point of doing these book clubs. But if you want to find the show, you can do that in a number of ways. You can find us on iTunes, and like in terms of podcast wise, you can find us on any podcast service. Stream us on Stitcher. You can find us on YouTube. for the most part, book clubs generally won't stay on YouTube, but you can join us live for those. You can also, if you could be so kind as to subscribe, rate, and review the show on any of the services, but iTunes being the biggest one, we would appreciate that. Also, show notes are found at darktowerpalaver.com. Currently, we have our most hated characters poll going on right now. So if you want to jump on over to darktowerpalaver.com and vote on that, you can do that. You could do that now. I think we're getting close to the point of shifting to the finals. So go ahead and have your voice heard if you're listening. Actually, by the time you hear this in a podcast form, we might be into the finals by that point. So
doesn't it end this weekend?
Yeah, I think it ends in the next day or so. So I guess at this point you're hearing this on the podcast. Go ahead and go vote for the finals and have your voice heard. But for this episode, though, we generally don't have anything for the show notes for book clubs because there's not really a lot to have. So don't have to worry about this show particularly. But if you want to check out the most hated, go ahead and check that out at darktowerpalaver.com. Also, if you want to contact us, whether it's for a roundtable or for a book club, there's a number of ways to do that, and Peter can let you know how to do that.
The best way to reach us is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. And on the Twitter, it's at darktowerpod. That's at darktowerpod. We stream all of our shows live. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Except the one thing that we always like to say is the book clubs do get taken down from YouTube simply because of copyright. We use audio clips. We just don't want to chance it, so we don't post them and leave them up. But when it comes to, for us, the roundtables, it does stay up. So if you want to go check those out, if you're looking for the old book clubs, you got to check them out, like Tad said, through any number of podcasting services because they are there.
Yes, indeed. Podcast services, you'll be able to find us all the way back to our introductory episode. 3 years ago or so now? Was it 2015?
2015. This September is 4 years.
Yeah. So 3 years and some change at this point. You can go all the way back on podcasting services. Should be able to find all the way back to the first episode, which is a long time ago.
Yep, in a galaxy far, far away.
Indeed.
On a different level of the tower. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, indeed. So we're diving in right now and starting at Chapter 4, which is titled Dead on the Other Side. And that's where we're at. Like I said just a second ago, where it's about 61% according to Kindle's guide telling us where we're at. Subchapter 1, it's kind of just rehashing a tiny bit of where we left off a little bit, right? It says you must be on your guard, the gunslinger said, and Eddie had agreed, but the gunslinger knew Eddie didn't know what he was talking about. The whole back half of Eddie's mind, where survival is or isn't, didn't get the message. The gunslinger saw this, and it was a good thing for Eddie that he did. So, of course, classic King style to give us some, foreshadowing teases kind of in the text, which he does quite a bit. I just got some of that going through my reread currently. There was something where I'm like, there he is doing it again. I just feel like it's like
I forgot you're going through the tower again.
I am, yeah.
The whole series.
I mean, I can't go into anything too detailed because I'm in the middle of book 4 right now, but it is my favorite book. And I mean, number 2 here that we're in the middle of here is my second favorite. So I'm definitely, I don't know.
Second book is your second favorite? It's a little on the nose.
It used to be my first favorite.
That's right.
Yeah, but and still, there's still a lot of love I have for this book because this is really where I mean, by the time I was reading this the original time, I was like already into this series hook, line, and sinker. I think pretty much the Eddie stuff, like the door and the airplane in our world, was enough to like have it like, okay, I'm in. But by the time we're here, I was already well into it. But this is still one of the books I love, and I feel like it just happened. Like this whole book just flows so much, where it's just like
it really does.
You're just like, I feel like this is one of the ones like if you really set your mind to it, like in a weekend you could read this whole book. Like if you were focusing on little else, like it just it's a quick read because it just drags you from one point to another. I mean, why our book clubs have taken this long? Who knows? That's more of just the way that we go slow.
No, it is. We definitely like to go into some things, and I mean, even if you haven't listened to one of our roundtables, it's something that Tad and I are guilty of almost on a episode by episode basis, is getting sidetracked by something we call the tangent nature for us. And so when we hit something that we want to talk about, we don't hesitate. We always like to talk about it. We just dive head first.
It's the point of podcasting.
That's right. Maybe we don't dive head first, but we definitely cannonball.
Yeah, indeed. So for subchapter 2, I actually have our first sound clip a little bit earlier than usual. So let's go ahead and take a listen to what Mr. Frank Muller has for us here in subchapter 2.
2. In the middle of the night, Detta Walker's eyes sprang open. They were full of starlight and clear intelligence. She remembered everything. How she had fought them, how they had tied her into her chair, how they had taunted her, calling her nigger bitch, nigger bitch. She remembered monsters coming out of the waves, and she remembered how one of the men, the older, had killed one of them. The younger had built a fire and cooked it, and then had offered her smoking monster meat on a stick, grinning. She remembered spitting in his face, remembered his grin turning into an angry, honky scowl. He had hit her upside the face and told her, "Well, that's all right, you'll come around, nigger bitch. Wait and see if you don't." Then he and the really bad man had laughed, and the really bad man had brought out a haunch of beef, which he had spitted and slowly cooked over the fire on the beach of this alien place to which they had brought her. The smell of the slowly roasting beef had been seductive, but she had made no sign. Even when the younger one had waved a chunk of it near her face, chanting, "Bite for it, nigga bitch, go on and bite for it," she had sat like stone, holding herself in. Then she had slept, and now she was awake, and the ropes they had tied her with were gone. She was no longer in her chair, but lying on one blanket and under another, far above the high tide line, where the lobster thing still wandered and questioned and snatched the odd unfortunate gull out of the air.
All right, so yeah, that's the first chunk there. Now, what I love about that in this subchapter is, yeah, I mean, as Ryan in the chat here, Frank Muller is a boss indeed. I love, like, later on we'll get George Guidel, and I do love him for a different way. Like, I feel like the books that he reads, like, I tend to like his voice works for me, but I certainly wish that Frank would have been able to finish it all, because he's certainly a treasure.
Oh, he's definitely great for the Dark Tower series.
Yeah, I feel like he's better
so
with the
good.
voices. Overall, most voices.
His Eddie, especially.
Yeah, his Eddie's really good. Like I think I mentioned last time, I think Court may be the one exception that I think Guidel actually does better, because book one you get way more Court. And I feel like he does like just something with Court that is a little bit better than Frank. But yeah, I love Frank's performance for sure here, because like, I don't know, like, whereas George, at first you have to kind of get used to it, because he has a little bit of different inflection for the characters, but it's not as like distinct, where it's like Frank, like, it's almost like you could just have like a radio drama and not have to worry about having the stuff saying Roland said, because the voice he has for Roland is like, oh, well, that's Roland, that's Eddie, and that's
It always reminds me of like all the different voice actors that you find out played so many different characters together. Like, like it really seriously blew my mind that the guy from Futurama is the guy that voices the Red M&M. And then like when I got into Simpsons after I met you, like finding out like the guy who does Homer's voice, Hank.
That Hank is a bunch of the side characters. Dan Castellaneta.
Dan Castellaneta. Finding out like he does like multiple different characters, but Hank Azaria is the big one, because that's the one I'm thinking of as Hank. Is that he plays like so many iconic characters that it's like, wait, so he could literally have a scene where 3 characters are talking, and it's all him just doing different voices.
Yeah, indeed.
That's what Frank reminds me of, is something like that, because like when he talks with these 3 characters just right here, it doesn't sound like the same person doing, different accents and stuff like that to me. It seriously sounds like
different
people doing it for me. So it really, I get what you're saying with George, is that it's a little bit jarring. It's a little bit tough to get used to, but I do love both of them.
Yeah, indeed. But what I love about this, just kind of this reveal, because this is kind of a reveal, because we've kind of like, well, I mean, we're just getting to data here, right? But I feel like what this is showing us is like, we know full well this is not what happened, right? We know Roland and Eddie enough that like this is not reality, but this is what she's perceived as reality. So like, it's kind of showing us from her point of view, kind
what
of
the last few hours were like.
Exactly. What things have been like at the care of these people. So I find it kind of interesting to kind of see it like portrayed versus just like, because I feel like you could have even just done this where she just accuses them and like throws it out at them, like you've done this to me, or whatever. But instead, it's better just to show it this way, because now you're like actually able to see like, okay, so this isn't just like, because if she was to say it, it could be lies, but it's like, no, this isn't lies. This is like in her head, like
this is fully what she believes.
This is what she believes, yeah. Which is like, I don't know, it definitely gives you perspective, or a little bit in terms of like where her character is at in terms of data.
That like, it's more than just her thinking. It's actual like oh damn, like
Yeah.
like something's really wrong here. Like we got the hints before, you know, and everything like that. Roland told him to be on his guard. It even goes over it again to remind us that he told him, which literally was just at the end of the last chapter.
Yeah.
So literally flip the page, you know, go down a little bit on the Kindle, listen for another 30 seconds on the audiobook, and literally King's reminding us again.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to ask you kind of this is kind of a not necessarily a first, but a rare thing for us here. The first line in subchapter 2, in the middle of the night, Detta Walker's eyes sprang open. They were full of starlight and clear intelligence. I wanted your opinion. If you were doing this scene, and they came to you and they said, Ted, we're going to do this scene. How do you want to do this? Like, what do you picture in your head when you picture her waking up?
Like a really tight shot on her face.
On the face, on a single eye, both eyes?
No, I think on the face. Because I feel like when you get into the...
Just the face?
To just the eyes, like I feel like that's like... It always feels cartoony to me. There's some some stuff that I watched, and you saw it a lot in like the 70s, where they would just get really tight on the eyes, and it's just like it never works. Like I don't know, I just don't feel like the only time I think it works is Sergio Leone, like the Good, Bad, and the Ugly. There's the showdown, and it goes like as it's like cutting between the three characters when they're at
and
that,
like their eyes are
in
shifting.
that triangle. Like that. That's one of the only times I've ever really seen like a super tight shot on the eyes that was like not silly.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many times where they're like not trying to be silly, other things that try not to be silly, and they do like close up on the eyes. I'm just like,
okay,
that's comical.
What about the peel offering in the Matrix, where you get the reflections in Morpheus's sunglasses?
And that's different. That's because that's a reflection shot.
It's a reflection shot, so it's not his eyes are not the main thing.
No.
See, for me,
I feel like you can let the actor act with their eyes just by being tight on their face. You know what I mean? Like have a tight one on the face where you have pretty much the face filling the screen. But like then that actor can, you know, as it says here, the eyes spring open. And then like you could just, the actor could then portray like the malice and everything that you're going to.
That's what I was hoping you'd say, is something along those lines. Because that's what I was picturing is like, I mean, this is a big moment here. Because we're going from Odetta, which is all Eddie's scene.
Yeah.
And Roland has a sense that there's something else.
Yeah.
There's someone else. There's something else.
Like
there.
what was it, like 1,000 snakes crawling over you?
Right, exactly. That from the last time. So we don't really get a visualization of that. We get Roland's maybe like shock and terror if we saw it on screen.
Yeah.
Because again, internal monologue and stuff like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So this would be kind of the
this
reveal.
This would be the reveal. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying this is kind of a big moment here for us. Is like, what do you picture when you see, okay, this is the first time, because it makes it perfectly clear. In the middle of the night, Detta Walker's eyes.
Yeah.
And that's where we've drawn that line. We know that there's two people.
Yeah.
There's Odetta Holmes and there's Detta Walker.
Yeah.
We've seen the difference between the two women.
Yeah.
Stealing, breaking plates.
In the flashbacks, right?
So
if a movie or show were to skip that and just get to her, here.
With just Roland's warning to Eddie in the past scene.
Yeah.
And then you get a commercial break, or maybe it's the next episode or something, a cliffhanger type moment. And you come back and this is your opening scene.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying this is kind of a big moment. And that's why I kind of wanted to focus on it for a little bit. Because what I wanted to say was, what you actually just hit the nail right on the head there, is that instead of going, because I picture like an eye popping open and seeing like starlight in it.
Yeah.
You know, to give you the indication, okay, it's nighttime. Like maybe do a close up of Odetta rubbing her temple, pulling in really close to her closed eye, and then having it open and showing the starlight that, oh, time has passed kind of thing. I was like, oh, that'd be actually pretty cool. But I was like, wait, how does that show the malice? How does that show the hatred? But then I thought about it. Imagine if they did that, the close up on just one eye, showing the starlight, or maybe both eyes showing the starlight. But then as they pull back, you get the actress is then able to do the sneer and the hatred and everything like that. It's kind of like a jarring reveal. And I think that if you put it to the right type of music, and I know how much you're a fan of music in film.
Yeah.
Imagine that drawback. And you don't do it, you don't pull back.
It's slow. Now, did you see there's something that made the rounds a couple weeks back about Ian McKellen and how he acts? He's always one that's always said that he acts with his eyes. That so much of what he does is in his eyes. And I feel like the eyes are the most powerful thing an actor could have. So I feel like the actor, whoever it was that's playing Odetta, like I feel like even whatever she would do to her with her face, like I feel like the eyes are always going to be the thing that would like really be the difference between the two characters.
Sure.
Because I picture that when I'm reading it. Like I just picture that like they know the instant she wakes up, it isn't even just that she has to speak. there's probably what we're going to cover in this episode. There's a point, when they're just like, we wanted to, when they wake up, hopefully it's the other one, and they know instantly before she even says a word when she wakes up that it's not, so it's a visual thing. Like it's something you could see and go, oh no, that's not Odetta. This is Detta.
It's exactly what you're talking about is a perfect example. It's the difference of taking a close-up shot of just the eyes of Odin from Thor, played by Anthony Hopkins, and Hannibal Lecter, again played by Anthony Hopkins, and putting them side by side and saying, which one's a bad guy?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to know.
No, I don't know about that one, though, because Hannibal, the weird thing about him is that he outwardly looks like a very polite, kind, and that was even the direction
the eyes,
he got,
like,
right?
Even she even goes into it, like, in the book and in the movie, like, his eyes. Like, his eyes were penetrating and everything like that.
Yeah.
And there's a really good shot of it that I'm thinking of in Silence of the Lambs, that close up of him.
No, in the later in the movie.
Yeah,
I guess I'm thinking of the dungeon.
Not the instant like when she walks in, but
okay,
later on.
Yeah.
You take a shot of that, and that's what I'm thinking of here. You put the side by side of Odetta and Detta.
Anthony Hopkins in the third act.
Yes, exactly. No, exactly. No, that's what I'm saying is like if you took that comparison between Odetta and Detta here, that's what I've come to picture here is that pullback and that reveal of that hatred, that snarl, that viciousness that she has and everything. And King's such a great job capturing what she's gone through here with them.
Yeah,
air quotes here. Yeah, what she's gone through with them to show her hatred.
Yeah,
so
indeed.
I just wanted to ask you about that because that was something that came up for me.
Mark says Jim Carrey and Me, Myself, and Irene. I haven't seen that probably since it came out.
Yeah.
So I don't recall exactly, but
he does. He has multiple personalities. He goes from being like nicest guy on the planet to being a complete dick. So.
Yeah. It's definitely it is a big moment though. I never really thought about it in that way. I mean, I usually do think more cinematically, in general, but yeah, that's definitely a good point that I hadn't thought about. When we got to this. So yeah, that's kind of what she's thinking. So what do you got next up past this sound clip?
So a little further down, she looks around, looks to her left, saw nothing. Looked to her right, she saw the two sleeping men wrapped in the two pile of blankets. A little bit farther down, saw the gun belts. The guns were still in them. You made a bad mistake, Mafa. And that's we'll get to that. Detta thought and rolled to her right. The gritty crunch and squeak of her body on the sand was inaudible under the wind, the waves, the questioning creatures. She crawled slowly along the sand like one of the lobstrosities herself, her eyes glittering. She reached the gun belts and pulled one of the guns. It was very heavy, the grip smooth and somehow independently deadly in her hand. The heaviness didn't bother her. She had strong arms, did Detta Walker. So I wanted to point that out because right there I kind of wanted to stop because, again, this is like 4 or 5 times now where King's called her Detta.
Yeah.
And the importance is that we have that transition now. We've gone from Odetta, now we're in Detta. And then, I like this right here. The younger man was no more than a snoring rock, but the really bad man stirred a little in his sleep, and she froze with a snarl tattooed on her face until he quieted again. He be one sneaky some bitch. You check, Detta. You check be show.
Yeah.
And so, like, we get the instance that, that's where we kind of figure out that the really bad man obviously is Roland.
Yeah, definitely. That's no doubt. No doubt there. Yeah, definitely. I had some of the same notes to look at. Just kind of, I find it creepy almost the way that she moves, just the way that I'm picturing her moving through this whole thing and just being it's very Smeagol-ish to me.
Crawling. Anytime you get something crawling, it's just not good.
But no, just like the sulking Smeagol, right, in Lord of the Rings. Like it's very just like,
you mean Gollum?
Like malicious and very like just I don't know, like shifty.
You mean Gollum, right? Because Smeagol's the Hobbit.
What?
Gollum is the creature. Smeagol's the Hobbit before he transforms.
No, they call him Smeagol the whole time.
No, Frodo does, but he's actually Gollum, right?
Yeah.
He does the whole cough,
Tomato. Yeah. Just because I think only recently that's kind of come up where like, and there's been some discussion on social media too about just kind of some of the maybe similarities that we have with Tolkien's stories and Stephen King, which is trying to do a Tolkien-esque thing.
He said that multiple times.
Both in this series and
yeah.
in The Stand, I feel like in both cases he's like taking swaths of like taking his chops at doing like a Tolkien-esque thing, and I feel like so just maybe that's what's in my head where like I almost find it like Smeagol-ish because like with him, like I said, he's always like I think early on too, like before you get too far into his story, right?
I gotcha.
He's just like this just this foul creature, that's just like a spider that's just crawling through, and I feel like she's the same way. I feel like there's just something inherently like unsettling about
even
her
King,
creeping through this.
King even mentions it. He says crawling along like one of the monsters or monstrosities or whatever it says.
And I could just see it being like almost like horror movie-ish.
Yeah.
In terms of like when you get into a horror movie and like a character's possessed and where they're like almost moving like subhumanly or like superhuman,
very unnatural.
Yeah, like just like where it's either like they're super fast or like super fluid. Like there's something they're almost just. I know that's not portraying that she's doing that exactly, but like there's still part of me that thinks that it would just look odd, and like then it equates to the lobstrosities, which probably adds to that. Where it's just like there's just going to be something unnatural about it. I think like The Exorcist, right?
Down
With,
the stairs,
the crab walk,
down the stairs,
just.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, make sure to check out the extended edition of because it's not in the original.
I think that's only like that's pretty much all that you see anymore, right?
Is it?
I don't think that.
I don't know. That's all I've ever seen because I didn't get into horror films until later in life. So.
Yeah, I don't know that you really buy like the theatrical version anymore, but I could be wrong on that. Then next up here, it's the next portion here. It says she found the Warren Chamber release, tried to shove it forward, got nothing, and pulled it instead. The chamber swung open, loaded. Fucker be loaded. So that's pretty much the main thing there. I wanted to cover is that she is checking the gun and finding in her perspective that it's loaded. So then she swings it back, and then we go down a little bit. Detta pointed Roland's gun at Eddie's temple. So that gets us to chapter 3 here. So it's just, this is, I don't know, like this, I guess this kind of just gives you, because we've seen a little bit from Detta at this point, mostly through the flashbacks, seeing from her perspective, right? So we as an audience know a little bit more, but it's like it's still just like alarming to be like seeing this, because this is like she's pretty much going to execute him, right? Like this is like point blank to the head type. This is no bueno. So. Subchapter 3 here said the gunslinger watched all this from his half-open eye. The fever is back, but not bad yet. Not so bad that he must mistrust himself. So he waited. That one half-open eye, the finger on the trigger of his body, the body which had always been his revolver when there was no revolver at hand. She pulled the trigger, click. Of course, click. So, Roland obviously no fool didn't leave loaded guns, because this is basically Roland's trap, right? Roland is essentially, I guess this is pretty much just a lesson, right? More than anything, like
it's actually my next note is him talking about that, because
right
below that, we go down a little ways, where it talks about Roland coming back. He kills Eddie, builds a fire. The whole time Odette is asleep for this, by the way.
Yeah.
They set a portion aside from her. Then he says, it says, he could have told Eddie then, but he did not. He understood that he must be Eddie's court, and when one of Court's pupils was left hurt and bleeding by some unexpected blow, Court's response had always been the same. A child doesn't understand a hammer until he smashes fingers at a nail. Get up and stop whining, maggot. You have forgotten the face of your father. So we get a little more like exactly what you're talking about here, is that he had the chance to warn Eddie, like actually really warn him.
Yeah.
Because we saw him warn him earlier. But like actually like, okay, we're gonna post a guard, we're gonna stay awake, you're gonna stay awake for half the night, I'll stay awake for half the night. Something like that. But he didn't. And it goes on and says, so Eddie had fallen asleep, even though Roland had told him he must be on his guard. And when Roland was sure they both slept, he had waited longer for the lady who could, he thought, be sly. He had reloaded his guns with spent casings, unstrapping them, that caused a pang, and put them by Eddie. Then he waited 1 hour, 2, 3, halfway through the 4th hour. As his tired and feverish body tried to drowse, he sensed rather than saw the lady come awake and came fully awake himself. And that's where we're back even.
Yeah, now we're pretty much lined up, and now we're basically going to see what we just saw in the previous subchapter through Roland's perspective.
Right.
Which is something that we're fairly familiar with at this point during this book, is that this crisscrossing from one perspective, point of view to the others. And now we're in Roland's mind to see kind of what he's seeing from this perspective of what we just read. So a little bit further down, he said, or let's see. Yes, this was the woman that he had brought across, is the line that I had highlighted, because it's like, almost for him, this is not even just a wake up call to Eddie, but
Sure.
for him, he's testing. He's like, the woman that came through is the woman that I've seen thus far. Not that he's seen a lot of her because he was away,
Right.
but it doesn't equate, like, and even just the way that Eddie's acting and stuff, like, I'm sure in his mind he's like, this isn't adding up. This isn't the person's mind that I was inside of.
Yeah.
So now he's seeing, and now it's for him able to kind of have that little bit of a eureka moment where it's okay. This is the woman that I brought across. Now it makes sense. Like, this is what I was worried about, not necessarily the other one, but this is the one.
Yes.
So
and it actually says that, yes, this was the woman he had brought across.
Yeah, and that's what I had highlighted. Yeah,
exactly.
Because so for him, it's a revelation for him a little bit
Yep.
too. Like, he suspected it.
He highly suspected it.
Yeah, but this is like his confirmation of like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're not crazy. Like, you came through with a very different person than is here now, up until now, where she's obviously here. Detta is on this side of the door. I mean, we can call it Detta, no Detta. He doesn't necessarily have that distinction yet,
right?
But he certainly knows there's something different here. Then a little bit further down here, it says he saw her begin to raise the gun. She did this with less effort than Eddie had shown the first time Roland saw him do the same thing, and pointed toward Eddie's head. Then she paused, her face filled with an inexpressible cunning. So that's that's quite the phrasing there. Just because she's already like been shown as like pretty, I think, malicious. I think it's something we could have already established. But like cunning on top of that is like, that's a dangerous addition.
That's a dangerous combo. And the next line, even in that moment, she reminded him of Martin. Like, oh damn.
Yeah. That's certainly one that's gonna. Yeah. It's definitely that's not, I don't know, I would say that's not high praise, but it's certainly probably a praise for someone that wants to be cunning to be lined up with Martin, because what we've seen of Martin so far, he was certainly cunning in his ways, right? With the whole all the trial of manhood stuff, he pretty much bamboozled Roland into failure is what he thought, but of course Caw won through there. Then the next section here says she fiddled with the cylinder, getting it wrong at first and then swinging it open. She looked at the heads of the shells. Roland tensed, waiting first to see if she would know the firing pins had been struck, waiting next to see if she would turn the gun and look at the other ends of the cylinder and see that there were only empties there instead of lead. And then in parentheses, he had thought of loading the guns with cartridges which had already been misfired, but only briefly. Court had taught them that every gun ultimately ruled by old man Splitfoot, and a cartridge which misfires once may not do so a second time. If she did that, he would spring it once. So he's basically waiting to make sure this doesn't get out of hand, I suppose. Because she is dangerous, and if she were to turn the gun and see that they were empty cartridges and not full bullets, who knows what she would do, but it would probably not be good for Eddie's health. I think it would be a good thing to say. What do you got next?
Actually, literally the next part here. But she swung the cylinder back in, began to cock the hammer, and then paused again. Paused for the wind to make the single low click. So again, cunning, waiting for the wind so that when she cocks the gun doesn't get heard. He thought, here's another. God, she's evil, this one. And she's legless. Well, she's a gunslinger as surely as Eddie is one. He waited with her, the wind gusted, she pulled the hammer to full cock and placed it half an inch from Eddie's temple. With a grin that was a ghoul's grimace, she pulled the trigger. Ghoul's grimace?
A ghoul's grimace. I love that so much. I don't know why there's certain things that King does that just tickle me, and that ghoul's grimace.
Ghoul's grimace, that's good.
It's great.
It is good, and that's yeah, definitely. You.
What?
Ghoul's grimace.
Isn't that great?
It is. It is. Click. He waited. She pulled it again and again and again. Click, click, click. Mafa! She screamed. Again, we get that line. And reversed the gun with liquid grace. Roland coiled but did not leap, and this goes back to what we were just talking about. A child doesn't understand a hammer until he mashes fingers in a nail. If she kills him, she kills you. Doesn't matter, the voice of court answered inexorably. Is that right? Inexorably.
Yeah, now that you're asking me, I know I'm gonna inexorably.
Yeah, I always there's words like that sometimes
it's because you're asking that. Like, yeah, it's like if I was just reading it, I'd get it. But then once you put me on the spot, then it becomes like
where you have to put it out loud.
Yeah, it's like oh wait, yeah.
Eddie stirred, and his reflexes were not bad. He moved fast enough to avoid being driven unconscious or killed. Instead of coming down on the vulnerable temple, the heavy gun butt cracked the side of his jaw. What? Jesus. And now I can just imagine waking up getting smacked in the face with a pistol.
Yeah, and it's like not even just that, but how big these guns are, right? We've pretty much had it portrayed a number of times in the book how big these guns are. I mean, Eddie had a hard time raising them with one hand. And obviously, you know, someone that's in a wheelchair is going to have stronger arms by default. So like she didn't have as much problems. But when you think about the size of those guns, like you're talking about a small hammer, basically.
Right.
Like you're not talking about just like you got a little like polymer frame like modern day like handgun that like weighs around a pound or like maybe like it's super light. Like no, this is like a fucking billy club.
Well, it actually gives you a very interesting telling because it says that she had an easier time lifting it than Eddie.
Yeah.
And that tells you just how heavy these are that a 23-year-old, I mean granted heroin junkie.
Yeah.
Maybe
on
a little
withdrawals.
A little bit weaker after withdrawals and everything like that. But still, I mean he's a 23-year-old guy, he should be able to lift a gun, right?
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't be a problem, but then you get to the woman who's wheelchair, so pushing it and everything like that.
And getting in and out of it. Like there's a lot of arm strength.
There's a lot of arm strength. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this is the 60s. This is not exactly, the age of light wheelchairs that are, foldable and stuff like that.
Yeah.
These are heavy freaking Berthas is what they are. So she's got some arm strength. But the fact that she still, lifts this gun and everything like that. And then flipping it and using it like a billy club.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it could kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Indeed. That's something I always have to remind myself because, I feel like at times, like, the gun will instantly transform in my head to being just a standard, like, something from Sergio Leone, like just normal size, pistol that you would have seen in the Old West. And that's just not what King is portrayed to us, to where it's like, no, these are guns of some note and their size
These are hand cannons.
Yeah, these are massive. So, yeah, definitely not like kind of what Man with No Name is carrying around. And then the next little bit here, Honky Muffa, Dennis screamed and Roland saw her raise the gun a second time. And even though she was legless and Eddie was rolling away, it was as much as he dared. If Eddie hadn't learned the lesson now, he never would. The next time the gunslinger told Eddie to be on his guard, Eddie would be. And besides, the bitch was quick. It would not be wise to depend further than this on either Eddie's quickness or the lady's infirmity. So, yeah, that's... then this is the point where he uncoils, flies over Eddie and knocks her backwards, ending up on top of her. So, that it's kind of just like, again, it's almost like an object lesson that Roland is giving to Eddie here. Like, plus also maybe testing his own theory, right? Like, I believe there's another something else here.
Confirming his theory.
Yeah, it's testing it to where it's like, okay, and then now, great, it's confirmed, and then also let, Eddie smash his finger with the hammer and learn something.
Using his jaw instead of his finger.
Yeah.
But also that goes back to what you were talking about how quick she was. And the unnatural speed that she was moving, like you were just talking about, is like, it's creepy, and Roland can't take the chance on that because she's fast.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely. All right, what do you got next?
I think it's... Yeah, they're tying her up. Let me make sure I'm looking here. Oh, yeah, a little bit further down, they're tying her up. What in the hell, Eddie said stupidly. One of my gun belts, the gunslinger panted harshly at it. Get it, and I'm going to roll her over on top of me, and you're going to grab her arms and tie her hands behind her. You ain't never, Dennis shrieked, and sunfished her legless body with such sudden force that she almost bucked Roland off. He felt her trying to bring the remainder of her right thigh up again and again, wanting to drive it into his balls. She... Move, God cursed your father's face, Roland roared. At last, Eddie moved.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's now it's just a matter of obviously you kind of let Jack come out of his box to test your theory and to teach Eddie a lesson. Now you got to get Jack back in the box, right? Like now it's a matter of restraining her.
This is if you let the kid smash his finger with the hammer, but the hammer still goes crazy and tries to murder the whole family.
Yeah. This is like, I don't know. It's definitely something that would, no fun here. And that's an interesting thing. Move God's curse your father's face. I don't think we've really heard that before. In terms of, we definitely know like forgotten the face of your father. We know like we know like the like patriarchal aspect of Roland's culture. But I think that's definitely, and I love this kind of stuff because that's like kind of just your world building a little bit more.
Yeah,
it's just like to show like what a way you would curse someone in this culture, right?
And in this scenario too. That's the other thing is like, this isn't just him, losing at a hand of cards and saying, "Oh, you son of a bitch." The equivalent of that in that world is that this is, I'm holding this psychopath who's trying to murder us.
Yeah.
Fucking move.
Yeah.
Dipshit.
Yeah. And I think like ultimately Eddie's definitely not anywhere near Roland's level. So I think like there's still some like, and also Eddie's coming out of this from a deep sleep too, right?
Yeah,
Roland's been awake the whole time.
Yeah, getting cold clocked in the jaw.
But so he's definitely not in a way where, if he's learning anything from Roland in the time he's been here, which I can't imagine is like a terribly long time at this point. But he certainly hasn't got that, like in terms like he's not instantly awake. He's not able to like, I don't know, like he kind of gets caught up in like what people in our world generally would, right? People see a car accident, people don't like instantly spring into action. A lot of times they just stand there and gawk. Like
it has to be.
You get caught up in like whatever. You're not active.
You have to be trained to react like that.
Yeah,
like that's something that I mean, you were going to be an EMT for a while, like going through the classes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's something that they actually have to like work on and train and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and I know that I've had friends that have been in the Army, like first aid, like medics and stuff like that. It's something that they have to like practice and train.
Yeah,
like I remember hearing a story from one of my friends' dad, who was a Army medic in Vietnam. That they had the medics like not separated, but one time they had like a couple medics put aside and kept up late, so they were really tired, and then they middle of the night, medic, just to try and how fast can you get to the wounded person? Yeah, stuff like that. So that like exactly what you're talking about. That has to be trained in people.
Yeah, and so Roland would have had that trained in him from childhood. Yes. Eddie hasn't, so I'm not necessarily bad mouthing. I'm just saying in terms of like Eddie definitely doesn't have the same kind of like. I mean, also Roland has an advantage, right? Like he was already, basically on the like the starting line of a race. He was already poised and stuff, whereas Eddie was like dead asleep. So, but even still, I feel like even Roland in his deepest sleep would have been at things a lot quicker to like, and because Eddie's not, it's kind of frustrating to Roland.
But also at the same time, I mean, the bigger frustration part of this is that Roland warned him.
Yeah, and he did.
That's the part is that, I told you that this was going to happen, basically. Yeah. And then you still dropped your guard. You still went
Doesn't
to
that
sleep.
piss you off in movies when like someone's warned something and then they just like completely disregard it? Because like us as an audience, we usually know that like the person doing the warning has every reason to like warn, and that what they're warning is like legitimate, right? So usually like we're in the audience and we just get so fucking pissed as like an audience when like the other person is just like, whatever.
Yeah, we're going after a giant shark. We need to do this. Okay, I'm going to go for a swim. What part of giant shark did you not hear?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, there's just so many, and I can't think of any details. Like, that's a good one. But yeah, there's just times where you're just like, come on, am I a joke to you?
Like what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And again, for me, in terms of like in the context of things, we talked about it when we were at door 2, Eddie's threats and everything towards Roland was made it hard for me to lock on with him early on, and this as well, because it's just like, again, it's maybe I'm being unfair, but it's like a failing where it's just like, dude, come on, he fucking told you, and you still like, you didn't take him serious. Basically, you do what all these people do in the movies where you're just like, like you don't even like pretend like you're taking it serious. You're just like, oh yeah, I hear you, and then you don't do it. I don't know. So just as we're tracking through, like with my first time, it's just like, it's like they stacked the deck for Eddie. Eddie for me, where it's just like
I'm not gonna like this guy.
Everything he does is just like, come on, I just want to shake him.
I'm just not gonna like this guy.
Yeah, exactly. And then subchapter 4 here says they almost lost control twice during the tying and binding. But Eddie was able to slip knot one of Roland's gun belts around her wrist when Roland, using his force, finally brought them together behind her. And then in parentheses, all the time drawing back from her lunging bites like a mongoose from a snake. The bites he avoided, but before Eddie had finished, the gunslinger was drenched with spittle. And then Eddie dragged her off, holding the short leash of the makeshift slip knot to do it. So yeah, it's definitely interesting phrasing here, like mongoose and a snake, like some of the things that we're talking about here. It just, again, it's all like not human, right? It gives you this almost like, I don't know, like I said, like I honestly, when I see these chapters in my mind, what comes to my mind is all those possession movies I've seen over my life, where like you see whether it's an adult or a child or whoever's possessed that is suddenly moving and acting unhuman. Yep. Like that's what I picture with Detta, especially when she's in like this frenzy, right?
Yeah,
like that's
she's stronger, she's faster. Frenzy's the best word.
Yeah,
for it. It really is.
Yeah, just a frenzy, and like so that there's just something about it. I just picture just this like. Almost like, what is it? The Tasmanian Devil, and the just
Looney Tunes,
just freaking crazy. Like it's just insanity, and how hard that would be to wrangle, as it were. But yeah, that's I don't know. It's pretty crazy to think about. What do you got?
Actually, just like right after that, Eddie dragged her off, holding the short leash of the makeshift slipknot to do it. He did not want to hurt this thrashing, screaming, cursing thing. It was uglier than the monstrosities by far because the greater intelligence which informed it, but he knew it could also be beautiful. He didn't want to harm the other person the vessel held somewhere inside it, like a live dove deep inside one of the secret compartments in a magician's magic box. Odetta Holmes was somewhere inside that screaming, screeching thing. And that presents the problem, and this probably drives you nuts. First time reading through, like we were talking about, it's like, for fuck's sake, dude, stop worrying about that chick.
Yeah.
Like, you got this thing on your hands.
Yeah, you got to worry about this.
Yeah, like don't be gentle. Like, come on, like get your point across. Like, take the gloves off. Take the kid gloves off.
Yeah.
And I that's why I wanted to I marked that part. Is I was like, I wonder if this is one of those ones that Tad's talking about. That's why I also brought up like the him not moving when Roland's telling him to.
Yeah.
And then this part, it's just like you said. Dude, it's like stacked that you're not supposed to like Eddie at first. Like, especially the way you think with it is just like
practicality.
God damn it, dude.
Right? Yeah, just practicality where it's just like, dude, don't be worrying about like wait till she's like completely under control and you're like whatever, then start thinking about like Odetta.
Get
right?
the situation under control, then worry about that. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, otherwise it might cost you severely. So
a couple fingers.
Yeah. You want to match Roland?
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, that would be something else. That would have been the end of the series for you. If another character lost some fingers,
Jesus
you
Christ,
would have just been like, "I'm done," and you would have just walked away. Oh man, yeah. But it is something to think about, though. Is that ultimately, like this is a shared body, right? That Odetta is somewhere involved here. So there is, I don't know, I actually didn't hold this much against him.
I gotcha.
Like I see where you're coming from, and there's part of me that thinks about that now, but like at first I was just like, no, I get it, because like this, it isn't just Detta. This is like, if you were to like, gouge an eye out of Detta here, when Odetta came back, she's now going to be sans an eye. You know, like it's just, that's
you start pulling fingernails off, that's going to hurt, and obviously that's going to be something that lasts.
Yeah.
And Odetta would eventually feel that too.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's where it's interesting, because that's been a common thing. It's a really good storytelling thing. It's like, okay, if I do this to this, it's also going to hurt her or him.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like I've seen it multiple times in multiple different aspects of storytelling where it's like, well, it goes back to like the possession thing that we've talked about already.
Yeah.
Like The Exorcist wasn't just like, the priest didn't just walk in and go, well, okay, boom, and just blow Reagan away, because, fuck it, it's just a kid in there.
Yeah, there's a little like 10-year-old girl there. Or
whatever
it is.
Gotta get rid of the demon.
Yeah,
same thing,
exactly.
And I've seen it, like I said, I've seen it across multiple formats and multiple different shows and books and stuff like that. I remember reading a book series when I was a kid where it was an alien invasion and they were slugs that would creep inside your head and wrap around your brain and take you over. So it's like, okay, you could kill the human if you want,
Yeah.
but it doesn't kill the alien.
Yeah.
So, like, what are you going to do?
You just gotta pray for aliens that water is poisonous. That's what you gotta do.
I understand that reference.
All right, so chapter 5. Although his last mount, a mule, had died too long ago to remember, the gunslinger still had a piece of its tether rope, and in parentheses, which in turn had once been a fine gunslinger's lariat. They used this to bind her in the wheelchair as she had imagined, or in parentheses, or falsely remembered. And in the end, they both came to the same thing, didn't they? That they had done already. Then they drew away from her. So, I think that, if nothing else, speaks to the practicality of Roland. Not that he's like a pack rat or like a hoarder, but he's not one that's ever going to get rid of something because
it might have a use.
Yeah, it doesn't have a use now, and it may not have a use for the foreseeable future. That doesn't mean I'm going to throw it away, because there may be a time, and like ultimately it's Roland, right? It's not like he's got like a freaking like cart that he's pulling with him. Like everything's like in his purse. Like he's not a dude that's like packed heavy necessarily. But the things in there is kind of interesting, where it's like, oh, okay, like
okay.
Yeah,
it's good that he has this.
Yeah, your mule died a long time ago, but yeah, I mean, rope would be handy all kinds of times and places.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's I found that just a cool little insight into Roland's character a little bit.
Just reminds me of the Boondock Saints. What do you need the fucking rope for?
You never know when you're going to need some rope,
That's right.
Sam and Frodo would attest to that as well.
Right.
So, what do you got next?
Just a little bit further down, after Dennis' colorful insult paragraph that I don't know if you want to read it. I'm not going to. But
it makes me laugh though when I'm listening to it, dude. She is so. Just in my reread, I went through this book a month or so ago, and going through this whole portion, dude. This whole Detta chapter was just like, I was like literally just laughing out loud, like at work, and laughing out loud in my car, like when everyone is listening, because like it's like horrible things that she's saying, but it's all so funny too.
You got one twisted sixth sense of humor, Tad.
She's hilarious, dude.
The worst part is you've affected me. So like when I listen to this, I picture you laughing, and then I start chuckling.
Yeah, I think that's all just blame that you actually find this funny.
Sure, but right after that, she said, Roland says, "She's the woman I was in. Do you believe me now? I believe you. I believed you before." Eddie said, "I told you that. You believed. You believed on the top of your mind. Do you believe it all the way down now? All the way to your bottom?" Eddie looked at the shrieking, convulsing thing in the chair, and then looked away. White except for the slash on his jaw, which was still dripping a little. The side of his face was beginning to look a little like a balloon. All right, I went cross-eyed there for a second. Yes, he said. I'm going cross-eyed. Yes, he said. God, yes. This woman is a monster. Eddie began to cry. The gunslinger wanted to comfort him, could not commit such a sacrilege. He remembered Jake too well, and walked off into the dark with his new fever burning and aching inside him.
I love just that a little bit earlier on there when Eddie's looking at the shrieking, convulsing thing in the chair. So I feel like they're just to like dehumanize her.
Well, that's not the first time they've done it either.
No, but like that kind of thing is like effective because it's like, like it is a thing. Like you almost lose the humanity and the fact of like the frenzy of what Detta's doing here. The point where it loses all humanity, where it's just like, this isn't even a human anymore. This is just a thing. This is a creature.
Yeah, exactly. Like just turning back one page, he did not want to hurt this thrashing, screaming, cursing thing. It was uglier than the monstrosities by far because of the greater intelligence which informed it. But he knew it could also be beautiful. So yeah, I mean, like King again, it's like you said, hammering that point home. So.
Yeah, and it's compelling because have we seen anything that comes close to this kind of just danger thus far in the book? Like in any of the books, like the two that we've read, like this is like next level. Like not just because like not even the split personality aspect, but just Detta as a singular creature is like. It's malevolent. It's like, she's just vile, like
thing.
Yeah, she's just just basically the worst. Like as good as Odetta is, the flip side is Detta is just that bad. Like she's like very dangerous, very violent, and just it's I don't know. It definitely strikes you where it's like, wow, yeah, you've had lobstrosities, you've had like
sure.
Sylvia Pittston,
an entire
like,
town driven to frenzy trying to kill one man.
Yeah, but it's like this just feels next level to me.
It is.
For something. There's just and of course you sit there and check yourself at this point where it's like, wait a minute, Roland is drawing his group that he's going to need for this journey from these doors. And the first door is Eddie, which again I already talked about. Like
heroin junkie.
I'm already like somewhat apprehensive about. And then you get this, and you're just like, what the fuck, dude? Like,
wow.
Like it's like, what the hell, man? Like I remember thinking that around this point of the book, where the first time I read it, where I'm just like, are you freaking kidding? Because like I love it in retrospect because like it subverts normal storytelling, but like because like in normal storytelling, right, you're just gonna get your Guinevere,
sword, your shield,
like,
your magic guy.
Well, yeah, like you're
for
just,
your quest.
You're just gonna get your Knights of the Round Table, and like they're gonna be like good people, like whatever. Like it just you're not going to get a heroin addict that's like smuggling drugs on an airplane that also is like has a lot of failings, and then like this multiple personality with one of them being
murderous.
Just insane. Like that's just a point where you're like, wait, what the hell, man?
It's like seriously, like compare this part so far. How far we've gotten in this book is the Fellowship of the Ring scene where you got my sword and my bow and my axe. And I'll go with you, and we're coming too. It's plucky. All the friends are going. There's 9 good things going on this trip.
Yeah. Well, and maybe 8, but yeah.
And then you get Stephen King's version of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, here you go, have a heroin junkie who's had to go through withdrawals.
Yeah.
Who doesn't listen to you.
Yeah.
As well as you would hope.
Yeah.
When it comes to life or death matters. And now you get a split personality woman with one of those personalities wanting to fucking murder you.
Yeah.
Plus, have a nice day.
Plus, just for you, losing fingers.
Not only that, here's a fucking
wet shells.
Here's a fucking infection that's also trying to kill you.
Yeah, that too.
Have a nice day.
Yeah, like there's just part of me where I'm just like, dude, what the hell is going on? Like I loved it. I'm like in on it. But there's part of me where I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? Like this is not the way I expected. But like I just remember thinking that this is not how I expected this to turn. I mean, not that I really had like a lot of expectations, but it's like with the tarot cards and then like drawing of the 3, the cover of the book had the 3 doors, like the one that I had, like there's things that come to your mind when you have all those things in place, and it certainly wasn't this.
Nope. I can imagine that in the millions of people who have read this novel, not a single person was going to be like, yep, the first couple doors are going to be absolute shit for this guy.
This isn't going to go well.
Yeah, I can just imagine us doing like a survey, just like get a bunch of people who've never read the book before, have them read about the fortune and everything like that. You're going to go through 3 doors, and you're going to pull someone from those doors that are going to help you on your quest. Stop there, and then be like, okay, everyone, what do you think's going to come out of door number 1? What do you think's going to come out of door number 2? Do you think he's going to get something good or something bad? Oh yeah, definitely get something good. And someone's going to help him on his quest.
Yeah.
Nope, behind door number 1's a heroin junkie. What's going to be behind door number 2?
Yeah, like I think like honestly, like maybe some of my expectations were is like you might get like a doctor, like you get like a healer or something. You get it to where it's like, okay, cool. You put your little like party together, and like it just. I remember at this point I was just like, dude, like okay, I know he clued us in a little bit by showing us flashback wise, like Detta and Odetta, like we know more than Roland and Eddie do. We've seen a little bit from Earth's side of her,
losing the legs, the plate,
the stuff with the men, like dragging them out, like so we have a little bit, but like there's still part of you it's like okay, whatever, and then like now you're here and it's like she's just insane and just whatever. It's like, whoa, dude, what the hell is going on? So that takes us through the end of. Well, no, I think I wanted to talk about the sacrilege comment too. I think that's an interesting thing because again we've been exploring this character now for a book and a half. We've seen quite a bit from him. He was willing to basically sacrifice or allow to be sacrificed. A young boy that was 100% dependent on him. Like I don't think we're under a lot of delusions that he's like willing to like make sacrifices. But here, like, Eddie begins to cry. The gunslinger wants to comfort him, which is like, that's one aspect of what we got to talk about. I mean, like, he actually desires to comfort Eddie here.
For sure.
And that's an interesting thing to think about, is like to have that desire, but then could not commit such a sacrilege. So to just general human compassion, right, is what that is, like, to comfort someone. So to call that sacrilege, and then of course in parentheses we're reminded about that he remembers Jake too well, so we can kind of then figure out maybe where his mind is at. But still, man, like, words for me, I'm a nerd when it comes to words, and the words you use are very meaningful, and like, to use the word sacrilege is like a very interesting word to use.
Yeah.
to describe this desire, right? He wants to comfort Eddie, but that's a sacrilege. Like, that's just insane to me. And it's really like, it takes almost to the core of who Roland is. Not only is he willing to sacrifice, like, anyone, most likely, because we haven't really seen him, like, maybe he's momentarily paused with Allie in Tull, but let Jake go. Like, nothing is going to get in the way of his quest. But like, is this basically him just like keeping everyone at arm's length, or is like, like, I don't know, because
does he have to do this?
Yeah,
is this a choice?
That's what to me is, because it's like, it seems to me like, okay, being willing to sacrifice him doesn't necessarily mean that you can't comfort the guy. Like, you've tore him out of his world. He saved your life. You've saved his. Like, this is like mutually beneficial relationship
so far, yeah.
And it's like, just weird that like comforting turns into a thing that is like a thing that he chooses not to do. It's just, I don't know. It's I think it speaks to Roland and his way.
It's interesting that you use the word that he chooses not to. And the thing with me is that when I see the word that he can't commit such a sacrilege, to me that's almost like he can't. And there's things that you can't do as a human if you're going to stay true to yourself. And that's the big thing, is like, like, we have to know where we can draw our lines at and everything like that. And Roland's got his. He knows where they are. He's very well aware of that. And that's what he's saying here, is that, he can't commit this sacrilege because he remembers Jake too well.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to look at him in that light, because that's just one more thing coming on, one more aspect of this character coming to light that you're just like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
Like this is a hard case.
Yeah.
Like, it's simply put, this guy is going through a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, and not even, like you said, not even being able to just do one of the most basic human things in human nature.
Yeah.
To comfort someone in need.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
because I think most people would do that to an absolute stranger.
Oh yeah.
Like, I feel like if it was,
you see it all the time where someone's like, I mean, you hear the stories about it all the time. I mean, there was one that I just saw recently about a baseball umpire that was out for a run and saw a woman about to commit suicide and talked her down off the bridge.
Yeah.
Just things like that. Like, people don't just turn their eyes on things like that.
Yeah.
But
I feel like if you did like one of those social experiments and you had like an actor that was able to make themselves cry, male or female, and just went down, sat down on the middle of a sidewalk, maybe not on a, but like on a curb somewhere, busy place where there's some people moving around, and was just weeping, bawling. Like, I can't imagine there's not at least some people that at least engage them.
Yeah.
Like, I just,
it's interesting.
It'd be an interesting, like,
it's interesting you say
test.
that. There was a unique, there was a show, I can't remember what show it was, but it was like a news agency kind of show, kind of like Dateline kind of thing, 2020, not, like News at 10 kind of show, where they did a test where a guy was kidnapping a girl. They were both actors.
Yeah, no, I've seen that.
And then you see people like look, and they're just like, "Oh, damn! Like, what the hell's going on?"
Yeah.
But then then there are people who are like, "Oh, hell no!" They drop their stuff and they book it at the guy. They're gonna kick his ass.
Yeah.
And he throws his hands up. It's a show, camera, kind of thing, and everything like that. So it's interesting that there are things out there like that where you can see like the social reactions. But then there's even ones like, I see people like, I mean, like, well, you see it all the time with like disasters too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like
9/11, I feel like you could see, you see quite a bit of it.
Random people just hugging each other and checking on people and stuff like that. But even like more recent ones, like there was was it last year that there was all like several earthquakes that hit like South America and Mexico just randomly throughout like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And like different countries just flooded them with relief.
Yeah.
But you saw people like standing outside their ruined houses, and there's just people there putting arms around complete strangers.
Yeah.
They just happened to be passing by when the earthquake hit.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Here, let's go get you a blanket. Let's get some food. Let's get some first aid. Let's get you taken care of. And it's just like,
yeah.
What the hell? Like that's just such a basic human emotion.
And I feel like
reaction.
I feel like missing that, it kind of gets into like maybe being like a sociopath, but it's like the fact that the first part of that sentence is he wanted to come for him tells me like Roland's not really a sociopath, but he's choosing like not to engage.
And see, for me, when I see stuff like that, I always think that it's his training.
Yeah.
I always go back to that's how he's been trained to do it so that he can do his job. Because if he can't, he's not going to be able to do it. It's the kind of thing where it's like, the example that always comes to my mind is the soldiers that have to crawl through, and we see this in shows, they have to crawl under the barbed wire with pig guts hanging down.
Yeah.
Because later on, you see them watch their friends literally get blasted to pieces.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like Band of Brothers is a good example of that.
Yeah.
It's pig intestines, boy. And then later on, you're seeing people get hit by artillery.
Yeah.
Flown in the air in pieces and stuff like that. Stuff like that. He's had that type of training, that desensitization to basic human emotions, because that can get him killed.
Yeah.
Is the thing. And so that's where, for me, like, I always forgive Roland, especially like my first time through when I read stuff like this. We've seen already ones with like Jake and stuff like that. People are means to an end for him. And it seems like that. And then like, here's like a perfect example. Like you said, he wants to do it, but he can't.
Yeah.
That's how I've always taken it.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And Ryan in the chat says, makes you scared / excited for door number 3.
Like, do you remember how you felt about door number 3 coming up on it?
At this point,
I mean, obviously we're not there yet.
Yeah, no. At this point, I was just like, why go to door number 3 at this point?
Right?
You're batting 1,000 here, kid. Like, maybe it's time to just like forget this whole door nonsense, because.
And we're gonna come back to that here in a little bit.
Not going your way right now.
Yeah, and we're gonna come back to what you just said in a little bit.
I mean, that was my thought process. Like there comes a point when you're like, all right, well, yeah, playing the whatever game where you're flipping the things and things just aren't going your way, maybe it's best just walk away versus keep doing them there. So now to subchapter 6. Let's see, and then the first part here says, much earlier on in the night, while Odetta still slept, Eddie said that he thought he might understand what was wrong with her. Might the gunslinger asked what he meant? She could be schizophrenic, which of course we know, like, this is just within the text, we know this is incorrect medically speaking. Roland
but was correct when it was written. I mean, not correct, but they thought it was correct. That's how I should paraphrase that.
I don't even think that's the case. I think it just comes down to, like, it's one of those things, the average person just merged schizophrenia and multiple personalities together. Mm-hmm. So it became like just, would you say, like common usage to call multiple personalities schizophrenic, and it actually ends up causing a lot of issues, because then like there's no distinction between the two.
But they're two very different.
They're two radically different things. But
what's the word? The conditions?
Yeah,
that's the word. Yeah, they're two vastly different conditions. I mean, it's the same
with very different things involved.
It's the same thing as saying, like, oh, you have lung cancer and you have liver cancer. Oh, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
No, you're going to go through two very different experiences, even though they're both cancer.
Yeah.
You're going to go through vastly different things at that point. Symptoms, effects, treatment even. And that's the thing is, like, schizophrenia, and I think we've gone over this a couple of times, just to make sure that I'm clear. Schizophrenia is hearing voices. Split personalities, where there are two different personalities or more inside you. Yeah.
Like multiple personalities is like Sybil, basically, right? With what's her name? No, they love me. They really love me. I'm blanking on her name now.
I've honestly never seen Sybil.
No, okay. It's the mom from Mrs. Doubtfire is the actress.
Oh, okay.
I'm blanking on her name now. And then, schizophrenia. I remember in my psychology class that I took in middle school, the teacher actually to show schizophrenia to us in a way was we had to, during the course of like a few weeks, people would have, like, while she was doing a normal lecture, she'd have headphones that she'd give to kids. They'd have to put them on whilst listening to the lecture. Had like, this is basically what schizophrenics have said, like, it can
what
be
it
like,
sounds like,
because it's different for everyone, but like kind of gave like a basic idea of what it would be like, and you basically still had to take the notes for that class that you were wearing the headphones.
Oh, damn.
So it was a very interesting thing, and I wonder if, like, nowadays, if there would be things like on YouTube and stuff that you could do to where, because it's not like it's like blasting to where like you can't hear you can hear what she's saying, but there's also these voices that are
it's
like,
not it's not noise. It's not noise canceling headphones.
No, it's
not something like that. It's
it was
like
just like those like
cheap,
what, like
90 cents headphones.
yeah, like
back in the day,
like the fuzziness,
Yeah.
like I almost think like what Peter Quill has, like just what would have been maybe high end in the 80s, but when I'm in the early 2000s in middle school, it's not necessarily
you can
state
definitely
of the art.
you can definitely still hear other people talking.
Yeah,
and hear what they're saying. It's not like
and the voices are
Yeah.
like not loud either. Like they're like varying degrees. Some are like barely whispered where you almost can't hear them. Other ones are louder. They're saying things to you that aren't necessarily like again, this is just an exercise in school. I don't know how, like, of course mileage may vary for people, but like this one, there was like accusatory voices. There was like things that, it was an interesting experience. And I would wonder if like nowadays if you could pull up like a YouTube video that would have similar things
possible. Yeah,
and I would say maybe it's worth looking into. But yeah, we definitely know there's, from our perspective, we'll just say it up front, we know there's a difference, but we're just going to go with what the text says from this point on. But yeah, we definitely know there is a difference, and not to be confused. Roland only shook his head. Eddie explained what he understood of schizophrenia, gleaning from such films as The Three Faces of Eve and various TV programs, and then parentheses, mostly the soap operas he and Henry had often watched while stoned. Roland had nodded. Yes, the disease Eddie described sounded about right. A woman with two faces, one light, one dark, a face like the one the man in black had shown on the 5th tarot card. And then we kind of are getting into like the basics here, right? And they don't know, these schizophrenes, that they have another. No, Eddie said, but he trailed off, moodily watching the lobstrosities crawl and question and crawl. But what? I'm no shrink, Eddie said, so I don't really know. Shrink? What's a shrink? Eddie tapped his temple. A head doctor, a doctor for your mind. They're really called psychiatrists. Roland nodded. He liked shrink better because this lady's mind is too large, twice as large as it needed to be. Which that's a great line. That's a great line for sure. What do you got next? I'll go ahead.
It's a little bit further down if you want to keep going.
My next thing's a little bit further down actually.
Okay.
So go ahead.
So just a little bit further down, Eddie's still describing like actually, I'll just jump back a paragraph just to cover it. Eddie says, but I think schizos almost always know something is wrong with them. Eddie said, because there are blanks. Usually, two people who thought they have partial amnesia. Personality because of the blank spaces in their memories when the other personality was in control. She says she remembers everything. She really thinks she remembers everything. I thought you said she didn't believe any of this was happening. Yeah, Eddie said, but forget that for now. I'm trying to say that no matter what she believes, when she remembers goes right from her living room where she was sitting in her bathrobe watching the midnight news to here. With no break at all, she doesn't have any sense that some other person took her over between then and when you grabbed her in Macy's. Hell, that might have been the next day or even weeks later. I know it was still winter because most of the shoppers in the store were wearing coats. The gunslinger nodded. Eddie's perceptions were sharpening. That was good. He had missed the boots and scarves, the gloves sticking out of the coat pockets, but it was still a start. I just like that casual observance of Roland critiquing Eddie mid-sentence, mid-paragraph,
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's impossible to tell how long Odetta was the other woman because she doesn't know. I think she's in a situation she's never been in before, and her way of protecting both sides is this story about getting cracked over the head. Roland nodded. And the rings. Seeing those really shook her up. She tried not to show it, but it showed all right. Roland asked, if these two women don't know they exist in the same body, and if they don't even suspect that something may be wrong, if each of her own separate chain of memories, particularly real, but partly made up to fit the times the other is there, what are we to do with her? How do we even live with her?
Yeah, which is the $64,000 question, right? Like, yeah. So basically, we're dealing with these guys. Obviously, Roland doesn't really have necessarily even like probably I don't even know that psychology would even exist. And Eddie's understanding is primitive at best. But I think they have diagnosed at least the most important things is that that the gaps are being filled on both sides, whatever way. The mind is just basically creating things to make up for the blackouts. And, kind of some of what we saw as readers through her driver and her doorman, basically kind of outlined for us through their conversating that we kind of figured this out already, but now these two have figured it out in the story.
Which is really interesting that we get differences, because it's interesting to think back to like the subway accident, because the subway accident, both of them knew exactly what had happened. They had been pushed, their legs had been cut off by the train.
Yeah,
they were now on their way to the hospital. The scene in the back of the ambulance where it says, like each one of them woke up and reacted a different way.
Yeah,
but they reacted to the same thing. It wasn't like one was missing time.
Yeah,
it's interesting that.
So it makes me wonder. Then, is there big events that are so big that it permeates into both personalities,
right?
And they both understand it because it is so fundamental. And would this be one of them? And the only reason that it's not is because they don't know how to interpret it, just like Eddie, right? Like, and Eddie almost had a little bit more, right? Because he had time to kind of to adjust to Roland's existence,
get used to it,
before actually getting pulled in. Whereas her, it was just pulled right in. So like now she's like maybe in shock a little bit, and both personalities maybe understand now that they're, something's happened. But unlike the train, like that's very clear and it's easy for both to register. Oh shit, this is what just happened. We got pushed in front of a train and we've lost our legs. But like with this, it's like, what the fuck do you say? Like it's, a train and missing legs. Like that's very black and white, and it's very tactile. It's very easy to understand. Whereas this, it's like pulled into a different dimension. I mean, even any of us with one personality, how the hell would we fucking how would our minds get around this? Like say, like put any of us in the position of her, not Eddie, that had time to adjust, but we just instantly, like, maybe we just get clubbed over the head and wake up, or because we wouldn't I don't know, either way or whatever, we wake up and we're in this situation. Like, how would our minds handle it? Would we go into like
denial,
hysterics, like there, it's interesting to see. So it makes me think, like, kind of what you're saying though, is there things that are so big that both,
it bridges that gap?
Yeah, exactly. It's so big, it's almost like a baseball going through, 2 layers of saran wrap or something, like
two windows. Think about it that way, is that you got one existence here. Some things may hit that window and you may get some penetration there. But when you have a big event, a baseball going through both panes of glass, it's going to shatter that disconnect between them.
Yeah.
And make it to where both of them recognize what exactly is going on and what's happening.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting to see that. And then Roland, talking about, like, he has no idea, like, how are we going to live with this and everything. And Eddie's response here I wanted to bring up because it's something that I figured you might have a reaction to. Eddie shrugged. "Don't ask me. It's your problem. You're the one who says we need her. Hell, you risk your neck to bring her here." Eddie thought about this for a minute. Remember squatting over Roland's body with Roland's knife held just above the gunslinger's throat, and laughed abruptly without humor. "Literally risk your neck, man," he thought. So it's interesting to be like Eddie again being like, "Hey, this ain't my rodeo. This is on you."
Yeah, and that does, like, get under my, burr under my saddle a tiny bit, where I'm like, really? Like, you're just gonna fucking brush this off as like it's his,
not my problem.
Just his problem? Like, I don't know. Yeah, because again, like, that comes into, like, the whole idea of, like, teamwork, right? Like, because that is just like an element of, like, oh, well, we're not really a team. I'm your captive, and this is your fucking problem. You deal with it type. Like, I'm not a fan of it.
I got you. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
how you felt about it.
Yeah, it's not my favorite, but next up we have another sound clip that'll take us through the end of this subchapter. So
Cool.
Let's go ahead and listen to Mr. Frank.
A silence fell between them. Odetta had by then been breathing quietly. As the gunslinger was about to reiterate his warning for Eddie to be on guard and announce loud enough for the lady to hear, if she was only shamming, that he was going to turn in, Eddie said the thing which lighted Roland's mind in a single sudden glare, the thing which made him understand at least part of what he needed so badly to know. At the end, when they came through, she had changed at the end, and he had seen something. "Tell you what," Eddie said, moodily stirring the remains of the fire with a split claw from this night's kill. "When you brought her through, I felt like I was a schizo. Why? Eddie thought, then shrugged. It's too hard to explain. Or maybe he was just too tired. It's not important. Why? Eddie looked at Roland, saw he was asking a serious question for a serious reason, or thought he was, and took a minute to think back. It's really hard to describe, man. It was looking in that door. That's what freaked me out. When you see someone move in that door, it's like you're moving with them. You know what I'm talking about. Roland nodded. Well, I watched it like it was a movie. Never mind, it's not important, until the very end. Then you turned her toward this side of the doorway, and for the first time I was looking at myself. It was like... He groped and could find nothing. I don't know. It should have been like looking in a mirror, I guess, but it wasn't, because it was like looking at another person. It was like being turned inside out, like being in two places at the same time. Shit, I don't know. But the gunslinger was thunderstruck. That was what he had sensed as they came through. That was what had happened to her. No, not just her. Them. For a moment, Detta and Odetta had looked at each other. Not the way one would look at her reflection in a mirror, but as separate people. The mirror became a window pane, and for a moment Odetta had seen Detta, and Detta had seen Odetta, and had been equally horror-struck. They each know, the gunslinger thought grimly. They may not have known before, but they do now. They can try to hide it from themselves. For a moment they saw, they knew, and that knowing must still be there. Roland? What? Just wanted to make sure you hadn't gone to sleep with your eyes open, because for a minute you looked like you were, long ago and far away. If so, I'm back now, the gunslinger said. I'm going to turn in. Remember what I said, Eddie. Be on your guard. I'll watch, Eddie said. But Roland knew that, sick or not, he would have to be the one to do the watching tonight. Everything else had followed from that.
All right, yeah, so that's, great performance, but yeah. Definitely pretty good chunk there in terms of, like, a lot going on. I think as Roland's kind of, because if we remember, I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before, but when they were coming through, there was something that Roland thought that he had perceived, but he kind of forgot. It was there and gone so fast that he couldn't, like, think about it, analyze it, and hold on to it. Yeah, and then as he was trying to, like, grasp it as it was slipping away, like, Eddie or something interrupted, and it was just, like, gone at that point. So this is the point when it's kind of coming back now. And really what it comes down to, and maybe this answers the question we were just talking about the difference between the train and this, is because at the heart of this is this cataclysmic event that the two beings looked at each other. And so maybe now there is that disconnect that there wouldn't have been there for the train, right? Like, so in a way, this maybe kind of like answers a little bit what we were talking about a second ago about, why is it different? These are both hugely meaningful things, like being pulled into the world versus the train. But the big difference here is that now you've got these two at a different state, probably than they've ever been before in any way, right? Like, I don't think that we've had any indication, wasn't there even a line about the fact that they don't really suspect each other, like, or care?
It's right here. Roland says they can try to hide it from themselves, but for a moment they knew, and that knowing must still be there.
No, I'm talking about before.
Like,
I'm talking before.
Before that, yeah,
because it was talking
it's
about
they just didn't
Detta
bother with it.
Detta didn't know about the money and the big house, and like she knew that someone
she wouldn't have cared.
She kind of thought that like she knew something was fucking with her stuff in a way, whatever, like her life a little bit, whereas like Odetta was completely oblivious to like anything, to where she's like, yeah, you don't even have like a suspicion of like something's weird here, like, because the mind is instantly filling gaps where she's like, oh no, I've been here all week, or whatever, you've been driving me for a way, there's all this weird, like, whatever. So now like you've changed this radically in the fact that now you don't just go to like again, it's not like Eddie where you're able to like drag it slowly towards the conclusion. Like Eddie was dragged slowly toward the conclusion of Roland being real and this other world existing. She doesn't even have the chance. Neither of these two characters have a chance to be dragged slowly towards the idea of, hey, you're encompassing the same body with another being. No, it's just an instantaneous one moment they're looking at each other.
Yep.
So it's both times now that something radical's happened to this character or these characters, it's been instantaneous, which is interesting because like it'd be tougher, right? Like, wouldn't it be easier for these two to just like maybe even have Roland and Eddie like slowly draw on both sides them to that conclusion and gracefully, but instead you had this I don't know, this face-off type thing.
And the difference between the ambulance ride and the aftermath of the train accident versus this is that these two were brought face to face this time. The train accident was them just both reacting to the same event. So losing their legs, Detta still acted the way Detta would act. Odetta still acted the way Odetta would act.
Yeah.
There was no, who's the other woman?
Yeah.
What's she doing? Who's in my body? There's none of that in the ambulance ride. In this one, that's why the important line there that I just read about Roland saying that they know each other is there now.
Yeah.
They can lie to themselves all they fucking want, but they know it's there. And then that's where, like, my next note is right here in the next paragraph saying, following the ruckus, Eddie and Detta Walker eventually went to sleep again. She did not so much fall asleep as drop into an exhausted state of unconsciousness in her chair, lolling to one side again against the restraining ropes. The gunslinger, however, lay wakeful. I will have to bring the two of them to battle, he thought, but he didn't need one of Eddie's shrinks to tell him that such a battle might be to the death. If the bright one Odetta were to win the battle, all might yet be well. If the dark one were to win, all would surely be lost with her. So that's where it's like,
yeah, and that's subchapter 7, by the way.
Oh,
too.
I'm sorry. Yeah, subchapter 7. Going on into the next subchapter, that's where Roland's like, okay, Eddie's helped me realize that, okay, so they're aware of each other, and now I have to get them, now I have to force them out of denial into acceptance and the next steps and everything like that. That's basically Roland's path now, is that I got to get these two to do battle. And he uses that word. He get them to do battle.
Yeah.
And it very well might be to the death.
Yeah.
Is what he says. So that's a very interesting, and obviously, like Ryan puts, like, we're already scared of, excited for door 3, but fuck, we got to get there first with this.
Yeah, now exactly.
On.
Now you got to deal with this. Also, Jack in the chat says, in a way, Eddie's behavior at the beginning allows him to have one of the biggest character arcs. And that's true, like, in general, when it comes to characters. I find that, like, when I'm looking at, like, new stuff, like, I just started watching a show, and we'll talk about it on the next episode, because, like, I am watching this new show primarily because EJ, that I did the interview with, he mentioned the show off air, like when I was talking to him. And then I saw some people on our Twitter mentioning the show as well. It's called The OA on Netflix.
Okay.
And I want to talk about it in a roundtable setting for sure.
Okay.
But like, there's Dark Tower people that are all into it. So I'm like, cool, I'll watch that. But even that, like in the first episode, I was like, there's some characters that do some things where you're like, man. But like, I look at it as a way where I'm like, I like this because now this is giving this character a lot to like deal with, right? You don't want a character that's well-rounded and balanced, and like if you got just this Boy Scout from the start, like what can you do with that character, right? Unless your whole idea is to go Breaking Bad and change like a goody two-shoes person. But in general, you have someone that's going to be less refined that will get refined during the course of the story.
Sure.
To come to like end result.
It's the superhero origin story.
Yeah.
You start with Superman growing up trying to deal with his powers. I mean, even if he is the Boy Scout of all Boy Scouts, there's still the learning to do the powers, keeping it secret. Yeah. And then even like the things of like, like different editions have different things with like the adopted parents and everything like that. But then there's even like uprooting his life and moving from Kansas to Metropolis to become a reporter and trying to get a foothold in that, and that drama with there, meeting Lois and all that stuff as well. But, I mean, you look at origin stories for superheroes. Yeah. It's all about what you're talking about, that character out of becoming. Yeah. Look at every origin story, like, ever.
But even look at Han Solo in the first Star Wars movie. It's the same thing, right? Like, you see this dude, he's a scoundrel. He's only one step away from just pure scumbag. Mm-hmm. And during the course of the first movie, you kind of see him bridge that and change to the point where by the end, he's a different person. Like, that's what you want, right? Like, in general, like, if you
want someone to root for.
Yeah, so, like, and I don't know that, like, Jack, that's a great point, but I don't know that I would have, like, had that same mindset when I first read this. Like, So for me, I think I was probably maybe unfair because I was just
sure.
like, oh, fuck this guy, man. Like he's a
Well,
piece
no,
of
but
shit.
that's
Versus now, like my mindset's different than when
yeah.
I was in like near high school when I read this, you know?
Sure. No, but that's still a great thing to have, is that initial like gut reaction to something. You know? And it's great to have that with a series and everything like that, because I had the same reactions to things in the series. Like my initial reaction to Odetta and Detta here was, oh, for fuck's sake, come on.
Yeah.
That was my your reaction to Eddie was my reaction to her, because I just could not stand this shit.
Yeah.
It's like the dude's lost 2 fingers. He's got a junkie who's all right, but still causing problems.
Yeah.
You know, he's trying to help him not stub his toes along the ways. But for fuck's sake, you give him not only a woman who's multiple personalities, one of which being a murderous bitch who's trying to kill him in his sleep. You also put the fact that she has no legs.
Yeah.
Like, she's missing the legs below the knees, and now you have to push her ass up the beach.
In a 1960s wheelchair.
Which are not well designed, let's be honest.
No.
Well, okay, they may be well designed, but they're not well designed compared to like what we got now, or even like what Eddie had in the 80s.
I know nowadays they're like made of like nylon titanium, like they don't weigh anything. You
They're
know?
they're like ounces versus pounds.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, nowadays, it's versus like, what we had in the 60s was probably like heavy wood, like it would be very wood or metal based, but like heavy for sure.
It always reminds me when they talk about her wheelchair, the first wheelchair, as the one from freaking Red Dragon.
Yeah, we brought that up before.
With Philip Seymour Hoffman, those big hulking things and everything like that. And then, like, obviously, if you watch Game of Thrones, there's a character in a wheelchair. You know, I picture something like that as well.
Yeah,
like,
very
that's
primitive.
not going to be light. Like,
No.
that's going to be heavy to keep up the weight and everything like that.
Yeah, indeed. And I have the next paragraph here. It said, he sensed that what really needed doing was not killing but joining. He had already recognized much that would be of value to him, them, in Detta Walker's gutter toughness, and he wanted her, but he wanted her under control. There was a long way to go. Detta thought that he and Eddie were monsters of some species called honky muffas.
Okay, so we have to give a little background here, because we both kind of chuckled every time they mention honky muffas. This goes back to the very first time I read through the books. I remember texting Ted and just being like, I fucking hate this bitch and their honky muffa shit. And so it's just something that it's always been a little way of Tad poking me, like Tad does if you've listened to the show before.
Who, me?
Yeah, no shit. He always has the way of doing it. I'll give it I can't give an example. He's putting his hands over his head like there's a halo there. Yeah, it's slipping down over your horns, you bastard. Hashtag Tad is terrible. But he always uses that line to get to me too, because it's always like it's one, because Detta drives me absolutely bonkers, especially early on with the first few.
And to be fair, I was the same early. It was only after like a number of reads. I was probably in my somewhere in the realm of the 5th or 6th reread where I just like it was just like a lightning bolt where I'm just like suddenly like I freaking love Detta. And I just ever since like, and even in this whole portion, like I told you, like I'm like laughing hysterically going through like this section. It's so great. And then like Roland being so like I don't know what you'd say, but like the fact that he like thinks that they're monsters from a species called honky muffas. Like, it's just, I don't know. I love it. It's like cute Roland is what it is, right? It's when Roland's being cute.
What was the
not that he's trying to be cute, but that he is like unintentionally being cute.
What was the phrase that we used when we described it in? We talked about it when the movie really came out. Fish out of water.
Yeah.
That's the phrase that we always used whenever something like that happened. And there's a couple things in the movies, obviously, and like we said, we're not going to go into stuff like that. But that's one of those moments where when Roland has a fish out of water moment, there's hardly a time where at least I don't smile.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of times it's like what you described with you going in the car listening in your headphones. Me just
yeah. Oh man. Then. Picking up right where we left off, because this is like all just good stuff here. That was only dangerous delusion, but there would be real monsters along the way. The lobstrosities were not the first, nor would they be the last. The fight until you drop woman he had entered and who had come out of hiding again tonight might come in very handy against such monsters. If she could be tempered by Odetta Holmes' calm humanity, especially now with him short 2 fingers, almost out of bullets and growing more fever. So this, what I find is interesting is like this isn't even your classic king like foreshadowing. This is just Roland's mind going, there's going to be more monsters. Like, so this isn't like a, like you're at, like I call them spoilers. It's kind of a joke because sometimes I think spoiler, like the way some people act about spoilers to me is comical. Like it's weird to me. But like, so I always called it almost as a joking way of like Stephen King spoilers. It's like, and this is the last time this character ever saw this person again, like, and then it's like 4 chapters later that like, like
something happens to one of the characters.
To die. Like, yeah, but
it's like no, the thing that always gets me is.
But I always call them King spoilers, where you just. But this isn't one of those though. This is just Roland thinking like, lobstrosities are not the end of this journey. There's going to be other fucking monsters we're going to come across, and I want the grit and the
toughness.
The toughness of this. But I want.
It's the line. It's the line right there. It's the fight until you drop woman.
Yeah. So I guess that it's good to kind of like. Did none of this help you at all when you were first reading it? The fact that like with that kind of thing, where like Roland seeing the value, did that help you see?
No.
Here's
the thing that happened with me. This goes back to what we just talked about. It's that, hey, don't go swimming in the ocean. There's a big fucking shark. I'm gonna go for a swim. I thought this was Roland's moment of that. Like
okay.
I don't have a trust yet built with this character my first time through, because he's made some mistakes in my eyes.
Yeah.
The way he's treated Eddie, that's not how you treat someone who's trying to go through withdrawals. I mean, like, even just like we just jump back a little bit. He wanted to comfort him, but he couldn't.
Yeah.
Well, dude, we both said the phrase. It's basic human nature to do something like that.
Yeah.
Like, maybe some people are a little bit more timid when it comes to like. I mean, my wife is very much like this, where it's like if she saw someone crying, she's the one of those people that's like, God, someone should do something.
Yeah.
But it's not her.
Yeah,
because she does not that out. Me, fuck that. Someone's crying. Oh shit, are you okay? Fuck.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Do I need to beat someone up? Do I need to call the cops? What's going on? What do I need to do? Fly into action is my my mode. My wife is very, very. Not, I don't want to say timid because that sounds degrading, but it's not that. She's very reserved. She's very internal.
Yeah,
and it's very not outgoing and stuff like that. You're very similar to that. You'll assess the situation. If there's action needed, you'll jump.
Yeah,
but you're a lot more calculating than I am. Me, it's jump first. How far down is it? On the way down, kind of thing. Tad's like, hold on, let me check.
Yeah,
it's pretty far down.
Take a look.
Me, I'm halfway down. How far is it? Kind of thing. That's just how I am. That's how I've always been and everything like that.
Like a swimming pool, right?
Oh yeah,
you just jump in.
I can't.
Me, I like dip my toe in. Like, how cold is it? Like, how deep is it?
No, that's exactly it. It's like here's a perfect example of that. Okay, so I was in the Boy Scouts when I was younger. There's a Boy Scout camp here in Utah called Camp Steiner, which is supposed to be like, I think it's the highest elevated Boy Scout camp in the world, is what it is. But it's a very high elevated. So the lake there does not warm up. It's frigid. It's famous for this.
Yeah.
It's a lot really hard for you to do like swimming activities because it's cold. And so for us to be able to swim when you're at Boy Scout camp, you have to show that you can survive in water. You have to jump in, you have to swim a certain length and be like, okay, if you go out in a canoe, because they have like the roped off, like you go out 100, you have to be able, if you tip over and your canoe breaks, you have to be able to swim back to shore. Someone's not going to always be able to go out and get you, kind of thing. So everyone else was doing exactly like you're talking about. Dip the toe. How cold? Oh, that's cold. Oh, that's cold. Me, I'm just like, fuck it. Splash. Just dived in head first. Get it over with. Get it going. Let's go do the test. Get
See,
done.
me, I'm just like, I like even if it's like a water park, it's like, let me just dip my toe in to know how cold it is, just so I can prepare my body, like my diving into what's like, it's a heated pool and it's going to be like in the 70s where it's like, it's very comfortable, or is it icicles, I just so I know what I'm expecting.
What am I dealing with? Which is why.
But once I know, I will go diving, because like the slower you go in, the worse it is, right?
Yep.
Like those people that will like slowly.
No, that's the worst.
Once I know like I'll dive in at that point, because like it's easier just to go all the way in and like, okay, cool, now you're acclimated. But
see, and I take it one step further, because I see people like you, and I'm not saying you do this, but I'm seeing people like you that are like, how cold is it? Oh, it's cold. Okay, I'm going to get a running start. I'm going to run and I'm going to stop. No, I'm going to back up. I'm going to run and I'm going to stop. No, I'm going to try. I'm going to stop. Me, I'm just like, fuck it. Don't give myself that chance. Just go. And that's why for us, like when we deal with problems and stuff like that, it's like, I need a solution. I need to do it now. I need to get this fixed. You're like, okay, hold on. My problem. This is where I need to get. If I do this, will I get here? No, that's not going to work. Me, I'm already like headlong into my first solution, and so that's where a lot of things go wrong for me sometimes.
Yeah.
That's just how I am. And that's for me, Roland here really was bugging me because it's like, dude, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, you've got to get rid of this threat. This is like, oh, hey, look, I found a demon dog here while I'm trying to fight hell spawns. Let me try and tame it to turn it against its master. Oh, shoot the fucking thing and move on with your life and go on to the next one. I've always been that way. It's just, and Roland really right here, I was just like, oh God, he's going to, and the worst part is like, my fear here was that he was going to sacrifice Eddie to try and get what he needs from her.
Yeah.
And that would be the end of Eddie. And I already loved Eddie at this point.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, you're just like bracing for like horrible things to happen.
That's exactly what I thought.
All right. So that brings us to, or do you have anything else in 7?
No.
Okay. So jump to subchapter 8. What do you got?
Let's see here. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right note. Nothing for a little bit. Do you have something?
Yeah, so here at the beginning, Eddie approaches Roland, who's wrapped himself in a blanket. How do you feel? Eddie asked in a low voice. The lady still slept with her crisscrossing ropes, although she occasionally jerked and muttered and moaned. All right. Eddie gave him an appraising glance. You don't look all right. Thank you, Eddie, the gunslinger said dryly. I love that. You're shivering. It will pass. Like, I just like, I don't know. The very few times, like, to me, that it feels like Roland's being humorous, like, those stand out to me because so far they're very rare.
And they're dry. Oh, so dry.
Yeah, indeed. So I love that. If nothing else, just for that. But, and then a little bit further down, it was the closest either of them came to saying it out loud that, and this is because after, I guess the line before, she'll wake soon, mayhap we can unloose her when she does. Like, that's the line. It was the closest either of them came to saying out loud what the lady in the chair, or the lady in the chair opened her eyes, the calm, if slightly puzzled gaze of Odetta Holmes might greet them. So it's basically kind of the hope, wishing against, whatever.
We don't know what's going to happen, but we hope it's this one.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the closest they can come to it is kind of like coming close to it. They just kind of get close to the idea, but not like fully embrace it.
Because it's like if you talk about it, you're going to curse it thing.
Yeah, exactly. Not just a little stitious, right? Not superstitious.
Yep.
And then 15 minutes later, the first sun ray struck over the hill. Those eyes did open, but what the men saw was not the calm gaze of Odetta Holmes, but the mad glare of Detta Walker. How many times you done raped me while I was buzzed out? She asked. My gun feels all slick and tallowy, like somebody done been at it with a couple of them little bitty white candles. You gray meat motherfuckers call cock. Dude, it's so funny. Like, I'm not saying like rape, but and it just like the way that she like is so degrading to them is what always gets me laughing.
That's what's
like,
funny.
Just like how much she like makes fun of them and is like constantly like prodding them and poking them with like it's just hilarious.
It's like the first half of Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
The drill instructor putting all those guys down is just funny. The fact that what he calls them and stuff like that, all that stuff's not funny. But it's just the way he's treating them, and that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what always gets me with when I'm laughing at these sections. And then, like, the next line is Roland's side. I love that, too, because it's just so, like, defeated, where it's just like, oh.
And that's actually where my next note is Roland's side, let's get going, he said, and gained his feet with a grimace. I ain't going nowhere with you, ma fa, Detta spat. Oh, yes, you are, Eddie said, dreadfully sorry, my dear. Where you think I'm going? And this is where I said we would call back to this earlier, and with it is well, Eddie said, what was behind door number 1 wasn't so hot, and what's behind door number 2 was even worse. So now instead of quitting like sane people, we're going to go right on ahead and check out door number 3. That the way things have been going, I think this might be something like Godzilla or Chidra the three-headed monster, but I'm an optimist. I'm still hoping for a stainless steel cookware.
Yeah, and that's
that goes back to exactly what you were mentioning earlier. Is like, like normal people would just be like, holy shit, like enough is enough.
Yeah,
like fuck these doors.
Yeah, it's like, all right, well, things aren't going our way. Like, we don't know if we want to pull this lever on this machine one more time because the first two.
What I picture is there's a scene in a TV show where two guys are stuck in this alternate reality of a Japanese game show, and it's like, if I push this button, I get hit in the nuts. And it's like, but I got to push the button to get out of this game, this reality thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. It's like, do I have to?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, indeed. Then a little bit, and then she says she's not going, and Eddie says, "You're going all right." And then gets behind the chair, and it says she began struggling again, but the gunslinger had made these knots, and her struggle only drew them tighter. Soon enough, she saw this and ceased. She was full of poison, but far from stupid. And I think that was at least something that stood out to me, because it's like, okay, like she is very, like we said, like frenzied, and she's not that she's frenzied now, because I think she's definitely cooled off. She's not like whipping and thrashing and trying to bite like she was earlier, but she is definitely still dangerous and stuff, dangerous, malicious, full of poison, it says here, but she isn't stupid. And I don't think in any of this is she stupid or out of control, even in a lot. Like I guess that I can't say that she's not out of control, because she is at certain points, but I feel like it's like a controlled out of control, if that makes sense. She's not just in full on madness hysteria. Like I feel like it's all aimed. It's aimed madness, I guess, is what I'd say, the way I'd see it. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good thing to note there. Is
for sure.
Yeah, she's not dumb.
And then even there, continuing that mid-paragraph where Ted broke off. But she looked back over her shoulder at Eddie with a grin which made him recoil a little. It seemed to him the most evil expression he had ever seen on a human face. Think about what Eddie's...
Yeah, he's dealt with Balazar, the sallow
thing down in the Bahamas. Who knows
Jack
what
Andolini.
else? Jack Andolini and all of Jack's friends. The customs people.
Plus, who did he deal with growing up?
Up in the Bronx.
Yeah, in the projects.
The projects, yeah, and everything. Well, maybe I go on a little way, she said, but maybe not as far as you think, white boy. And sure God, not as fast as you as fast you think. I can't even read that. What do you mean? The leering over the shoulder grin again. You find out, white boy, her eyes mad and cognate, shifted briefly to the gunslinger. You both be finding Dad out. So it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, indeed. So then that's all I had for this subchapter.
Yep. And then the start of the next subchapter is right where we start.
All right, go ahead.
The day was a nightmare.
Yeah.
All right, find that out real fast. The foreshadowing and everything. It was hard to calculate distance traveling when you were moving along a landscape which varied so little, but Eddie knew their progress had slowed to a crawl, and he knew who was responsible. Oh yeah, you both be finding Dad out, Dada had said, and they hadn't been on the move more than a half hour before the finding out began. Pushing. That was the first thing. Pushing the wheelchair, and this we talked about this before. Pushing the wheelchair up a beach of fine sand would have been as impossible as driving a car through deep, unplowed snow. This beach, with its gritty, many surface, made moving the chair possible, but far from easy. It would roll along smoothly enough for a while, crunching over shells and popping little pebbles to either side of its hard rubber tires, and then it would hit a dip where finer sand had drifted, and Eddie would have to shove, grunting to get it and its solid, unhelpful passenger through it. The sand sucked greedily at the wheels. You might have to simultaneously push and throw your weight against the handles of the chair in a downward direction, or it and its bounded occupant would tumble over face first onto the beach. Dada would cackle as he tried to move her without upending her. You having a good time back there, honey child? She said each time the chair ran into one of these dry bogs. That's not the part that I was thinking about. They talk about the chair at one point. I'm trying to remember where that is.
Is it now or was it an earlier point?
No, it's during the pushing here up the beach that they talk about it. I'm trying to remember where it is.
Okay, but
I haven't marked, but I thought that was
no. That's still a good explanation of why they're the first part of why they're having issues. And it's certainly something that comes to my mind, like even early on reading, like the first time reading, was like a woman without legs that's in a wheelchair. She's not in a world that would really be conducive of such things.
Yeah, there's no sidewalks.
Yeah, exactly. We're in the wilderness here. We've been through a desert, a mountain range, under a mountain. I was going to say a mine, but it's not really a mine. Under a mountain.
It was a mine. It was a long forgotten
and now
mine.
A beach. It's like you've got you haven't really seen a whole lot that was like
Civilization.
super great for a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So like,
They are definitely not handicap friendly in Roland's world.
No. So there was just like part of me that was like in my head equating where I'm just like, how the fuck is this going to work?
Yeah.
Like not the Detta portion, but even just the fact. I mean, even probably even before this, then probably back with the last chapter when we were dealing with Odetta, is there was part of me. It's like, how the hell are you going to deal with this? Like, that was probably one of the things that like almost flabbergasted me the most about this character or these two characters, however you want to look at it, was that because I'm just like, I was just, I don't know, it was just shocking to me because I'm like, not even just the multiple personalities, but yeah, the wheelchair, like, dude, like. I've seen Westerns. I've seen it's just none of it. It didn't equate. It didn't compute in my mind. Where I'm just like, I don't see how this is going to happen. And I even started wondering like, is there going to be something that they're going to be able to get like whether it's artificial legs or whether like some magic or something is going to restore her legs. Like that just there's no way. That was like the thought processes for me early on is like trying to work it out where it's like, well, this can't be permanent or she's going to die. Like this character's going to have to be like, there's no way this character's long term.
Yeah.
It just didn't because it couldn't. It's hard for me to put in words because I didn't really have the words. Even then, I was just like, this can't happen. Like this isn't gonna last, obviously. So, yeah. Let's see. What do you got? Are you going down a little bit further?
No, that was where it was. Is that they have a hard time pushing through all the different kinds of sand.
Yeah. And then the next down a little bit further, stopping. That was the next thing. They had struck a firm stretch of beach. Eddie pushing the chair along faster, thinking vaguely that if he could keep this bit of extra speed, he might be able to drive right through the next sand trap he happened to strike on pure impetus. All at once, the chair stopped dead. The crossbar on the back hit Eddie's chest with a thump. He grunted. Roland looked around, but not even the gunslinger's quick reflexes could stop the lady's chair from going over exactly as it had threatened to do on each of the sand traps. It went and Detta went with it, tied and helpless, but cackling wildly. She still, I could see you shaking your head over there in the corner of my eye. She still was, and Roland and Eddie finally managed to right the chair again. Some of the rope had drawn so tight that it must have been cutting cruelly into her flesh, cutting off the circulation to her extremities. Her forehead was slashed and blood trickled into her eyebrows. She went on cackling just the same. So there's and basically we'll end up finding here a little bit further down is, if anyone's dealt with a wheelchair, that generally you have a brake function.
Yep. And
she's basically tripping that braking function, which kind of like a bike, if you were going at any sort of speed and then you jammed like the brake really hard, you'd kind of go over.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of the next thing, like like what was the first line there? The day was a nightmare. I almost thought the day was hell.
Yeah.
But we're basically going through the reasons why, and this is that number 2 is stopping.
Yeah, and then like this is the part that I was talking about just a second ago. The men were both gasping, out of breath by the time the chair was on its wheels again. The combined weight of it and the woman in it must have been totaled 250 pounds, most of it chair. It occurred to Eddie that if the gunslinger had snatched Detta from his own when 1987, the chair might have weighed as much as 60 pounds less.
Yeah.
So that just tells you 250 pounds with most of it being the chair. So smaller woman kind of thing. That tells you that's a lot of weight in a chair that you have to push up a sandy beach.
Yeah.
And hitting those sand traps.
And even the fact that it hit him in the chest. Like I've pushed wheelchairs. They're generally would maybe hit you in the stomach more. In terms of where the handles are at that we're used to. Hitting you in the chest means that this is literally like the one in the Red Dragon. Like it's
a high
back with the handles up high, which means now that you don't have you have different leverage on it when you're trying to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
Like than you would if it was a little bit lower. Like I think they improved for a reason, and the reason that they're almost universally now that the handles are. No, I'd say closer to waist length versus like chest length because it's a lot more comfortable pushing, whatever. So. Yeah, that adds to it for sure. And certainly when King wrote this in the late 80s, even then it would have been clear that he was basically it would have been clear to him that he had chosen the time period he had chosen meant that the wheelchair that she would have would be far from ideal.
Exactly. And that goes back to what you were just talking about with how is this gonna go?
Yeah.
Like this is not good for them.
No, yeah, not at all.
Yeah. And then right here, she gets cut. She's bleeding. She's blinking blood out of her eyes. Look here, you boys done upsot me. He said, call your lawyer. Eddie muttered, sue us. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. Down a little further. So the gunslinger took a piece of his shirt. Enough of it was gone now. The rest didn't much matter, and reached toward his left hand to mop the blood away from the cut on her forehead. She snapped to him, and from the savage click those teeth made when they came together, Eddie thought that if Roland had been an instant slower drawing back, Detta Walker would have evened the number of fingers on his hands for him again.
Jesus.
Like, think about how loud in an open setting on a beach, right? Not like in a studio like we're in now.
Yeah.
To like the teeth would click that. Like, how hard are you trying to bite?
Jesus.
For those teeth to come together that loudly.
You know what I always think of here is the thing I read one time online, that the thickness of a human finger is that of a carrot.
Oh.
So if you bite through a carrot, that was what it would take to bite off someone's finger. Bone, including the bone. So it's just like, yeah, like it's possible. It's entirely possible to do. So my hand hurts. My fingers hurt thinking about that.
Then the next little bit, she cackled and stared at him with mean, merry eyes, which is an interesting way to portray it there, right? Or meanly merry, I guess. Meanly merry eyes. But the gunslinger saw fear hidden far back in those eyes. She was afraid of him, afraid because he was the really bad man. Why was he the really bad man? Maybe because some deeper level she sensed what he knew about her. So that's an interesting little reveal a little bit, is Roland kind of knowing that like that's what she calls him, and maybe even trying to like think why is that me, you know? And ultimately us too as readers, right? Earlier on, a few episodes back, we talked about how even Odetta was very standoffish towards Roland. There was something about Roland she was not keen to at all.
Right.
And it's Detta even more so. And there's a reason for that. And of course, like we just discovered during the course of this episode, she knows deep down, both sides know about the other one now, and they both know Roland is there during it. So there's probably a good chance that the hatred or whatever it might be, or fear, comes from the fact of his knowing the truth of it all.
No, exactly. And I think that's why she has such deep fear of him versus like Eddie.
Yeah.
Is because of that.
Yeah, indeed. Hold her head, the gunslinger said evenly. She bites like a weasel. Again, some of these lines, they just tickle me, man. I don't know why that makes me laugh so much. Oh, weasel always makes me think of another book, but this is certainly a great line. She bites like a weasel.
For sure.
What do you got next? I had to highlight that one just for the humor.
No, I had that one highlighted as well. Roland goes down, dips his soaked the piece of shirting in the salt water, and then came back. She began to scream as he approached. Don't you be touching me with that thing. Don't you be touching me with no water from where the poison things come from. Get it away, get it away. Hold her head, Roland said in the same even voice. She was whipping it from side to side. I don't want to take any chances. Eddie held it and squeezed it when she tried to shake free. She saw he meant business and immediately became still, showing no more fear of the damp rag. It had only been a sham after all. She smiled at Roland as he bathed the cut, carefully washing out the last clinging particles of grit. In fact, you look more than just tuckered out, Detta observed. You look sick, Greymeat. I don't think you're ready for no long trip. I don't think you're ready for nothing like that. And so that just shows back like what we were talking about previously with her, like her cunning and the way she reacts and stuff like that. She puts on this whole sham here, like, oh no, the water's poison. Don't touch me with anything from those poison things. And then as soon as she gets, her head locked in place by Eddie, she's like, all right, yeah. All right, you got me.
Yeah, indeed. The next little bit down here, it kind of goes into finding the brake on the wheelchair. It says, let's see, to slow, or why to slow them down. That was all. There was no reason to do such things, but a woman like Detta, Eddie thought, needed no reason. A woman like Detta was perfectly willing to do such things out of sheer meanness. I feel like that's a great line.
Yeah,
which is true, right? I think that is definitely something that we've found with Detta, is that she doesn't need a reason necessarily.
Yeah, and then Roland loosens her bonds a bit so the blood flow could more freely, then tied her hand firmly away from the brake. That'd be all right, Mr. Man, Detta said, offering him a bright smile filled with too many teeth. That'd be all right just the same. There'd be other ways to slow you boys down, all sorts of ways. Let's go, the gunslinger said tonelessly. All right, man, Eddie asked. The gunslinger looked very pale. Yes, let's go. They started up the beach again.
Indeed. I think that's a good stopping point, too. I feel like the rest of this chapter, it kind of starts, I mean, we're at time pretty close, too. But also, I think the rest of this chapter starts to shift into kind of a different, I don't know, a little bit different than what the rest of it kind of this chapter kind of evolves a little bit, and I feel like now we're going to start dealing with a little bit more on top of Detta. So I feel like it's a good spot to maybe stop, and then when we come back after a couple of round tables, we can start, kind of we've kind of closed that first chapter of this journey. Now let's go on to the second half on the next episode. So a lot of fun. Yeah, I just knew I'd be laughing during some of it though, man. This
you and your Detta,
dude. It's so good. She's so funny, man. She cracks me up.
Jesus.
But yeah, no. So let's go ahead and hit the closing information. First of all, if you want to find the show, you can do it on iTunes, stream us on Stitcher. You can find us on any podcast services. You can subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those services, and most importantly, iTunes. We would definitely appreciate that. Also, if you want to find, we don't really have show notes for this episode, but if you want to find our most hated poll for people live in the chat, you still got a little bit longer. I think it's tomorrow that the poll closes for our final four, and then we'll be getting into our finals. But anyone that's listening to the podcast, the finals will be posted by the time this episode is on your podcast feed. So go check that out, and that'll be running until right up to our next episode. So when we join you again in a couple weeks, we'll be crowning our winner for the whole tournament. So check that out at darktowerpalaver.com. And yeah, Peter can let you know other ways to engage with us. As you know, we can even say for the roundtables as well, we've come to a new commitment that for every roundtable, regardless of length and stuff, we want to do at least one email.
At least one.
And so I will say from my perspective too, because if we end up having ones that are like super packed, I might like go out of order a little bit and maybe find a smaller, easier to handle one versus like one that may be too crazy. But we definitely want to be keeping up on emails. So definitely Peter will give you the details on how, but please be sending those emails because it'll be a bigger part of the show for the tail end of 2019.
And like Ted said, you can email us. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. We're on social media, facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. We're on the Twitter as well. It's at darktowerpod. That's at darktowerpod. We stream all of our shows. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. And roundtables stay up. Book clubs do not due to the copyright issue with the sound clips like you heard today. And so check those out. You can go back a little ways with the roundtables. Not all of them are up there. We started that partway through our show running. But all of our episodes are available on podcast services.
Indeed. So next time we'll be back for a couple roundtables for the next couple episodes. And then let's see. So I think we got one more in this month that'll be there. And then the beginning of June, we'll have the first episode of June will be a roundtable. So mid-June, you'll have us back here for a book club. So yeah, right in the heat of the summer as things get warmer. And
here in Utah.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, this desert heat is all kinds of fun. So, yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you guys for joining us in the chat. Mark, Jack, Ryan.
Yeah.
I think that's everyone. Yep. I almost thanked you. I guess I could thank you for being in the chat as well, Peter.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Ted.
But thank you guys for joining us. Definitely always good to have you guys with us. And we're going to see you guys next time. As we always say, long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, the recording is ended. I had to make sure I get some silence there. Thank you guys for joining us in the chat. Always good to see you guys, and see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
We're on track now.
Normal schedule now.
Yeah, normal schedule. So we'll see you guys not next week, but the week after.
Yep.
Unless you see anything from us on social media, just plan on the same time, midday Saturday.
5 Eastern usually is when we record.
I guess that'd be late afternoon. Maybe,
depending on where you're at.
Yeah, it depends on where you're at for sure. For us, it's afternoon.
Evening.
Yeah, maybe it's evening and for East Coast. But yeah, same bat time, same bat channel. If anything changes, we'll let you know on social media. But it's certainly what we always kind of have penciled in as our thing. So we'll see you guys then. And thank you guys for joining us. And yeah, there's going to hopefully some news because didn't we find out that filming is going to be happening by the time our next episode?
Yeah.
They'll be within
Yeah.
the first couple days of filming.
Right.
So
because we knew we were doing a book club this week.
yeah,
So
for this
we
one, but
knew
it was
that-
like
it was like mid-May.
it was like 22nd of
Yeah.
May is what that Croatian article said.
Yeah.
So by the time we film or record next time, we'll be
Filming would have either been wrapped or just about
just
to wrap.
start. No, just starting.
Just
It was like-
started.
it was like May 22nd through June, like early June.
Yeah.
is what that article
Oh, right,
said.
right.
So yeah, they'll theoretically be the first couple days into shooting by the time we record
Hey.
again. So see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys.